What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 81 of the Hoop Venue podcast. My name is Tyler, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend Sean. Today, we've got, in my opinion, our best episode of the season. Last year, this was our probably our best episode. I don't know. We've done a lot of lengthier, in-depth discussions on various different topics. But in my opinion, the most fun I've had doing an episode was last year's installment of ranking every NBA playoff team. To quickly refresh your memory, if you weren't around for our rankings last year, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to run through the 20 teams, which includes it's the top 10 in each conference. So if you're in the play-in, you are considered a playoff team for this exercise. What better time to do that than, well, I guess by the time you're listening to this, it'll be yesterday, but the NBA season just officially ended. We finally have locked in playoff matchups, and we are going to be ranking these 20 teams. We're going to be getting to the bottom of who the worst team in the playoffs is, who we kind of don't want to see make it to the first round out of the play-in, and then up to the top, who the heaviest hitting contenders in the league are. Sean, what was your process like for ranking these teams?
I think I just went with the approach of who did I most likely saw winning a championship, and then once we get to the tiers, kind of sorting the teams based off what I think is playing the best basketball right now and who I just think is the better teams in general.
Yeah, for me, so I want to make an important distinction, right? So I was on Nerd Sesh last week, and we ranked our top 10 contenders in the league. And I think ranking contenders is slightly different than ranking just the playoff teams in general based on the quality of the team. And I want to make that distinction because on that contenders list, what I was trying to answer was basically if I was making a Vegas odds list of the teams that are most likely to win a championship based on who's in front of them, where they're seated, what the path would look like, how lucky they have to get, all that stuff. For this exercise, it's more ranking the teams against each other based on what quality of team I think they are. So it's not about who I think has the most likely path to the championship. It's more about if these teams were ranked in a 1 through 20 bracket with no conferences, this is how I would seed the teams. In order from number 1 being the team that I think is just the best team in basketball, and then 20th being the team that I think is the worst team going into the playoffs. And of course, there's a lot that goes into ranking teams, like your depth, your two-way ability, your half-court offense, your half-court defense, your ability to win the transition, win the margins. We're going to talk about all that good stuff with each team. I think what makes these discussions so interesting and so fun for me is that no two teams win in the same way. So where one team could be lights out shooting the three ball, another team could win more games by being a bad three-point shooting team that dominates the offensive glass. Or there could be a team that's really good at winning the turnover battle. Just all these different things. There's so many different factors that go into making a team great or making a team better than another one. And I'm excited to just get into the discussion. So Sean, you can kick it off for us. What was your bottom tier? Like what was your bottom tier of teams? Like what was the label you gave to your bottom tier?
The label I gave to my bottom tier were basically playing back into playing / severely unlikely. Like I won't see them winning a first round series.
How many teams did you have in that tier?
I came out of this tier with 4.
Okay, I think I know who your 4 teams are. I have 2 tiers here. I have a tier with 3 of them, and then I have a tier below that with just one team by themselves that I think is just far and away the worst team going into the playoffs. So let's start with some good old negativity, man. My bottom team is the Trailblazers, and I just think they are considerably worse than any other team in either conference going into the playoff push. And we've actually talked quite a bit about why that's the case, in my opinion. I think there's a lot to like with this Portland team. They're big and athletic. That's always a good sign. They do have a lot of great half-court defensive players. Like Toumani Camara is kind of getting back to his defensive level, and he's been a lot better recently offensively. So we might finally be seeing that two-way leap from Toumani Camara. Donovan Clingan, one of the best rim protectors in the league. Great drop defender, great rebounder. Robert Williams III has been great. They've gotten some nice minutes from Matisse Thybulle recently, so they've got defensive pieces. But as a functional unit, they've never been able to string together a great stretch of team defense for a couple of reasons. I think one, in any lineup, they're forced to play kind of awkward awkward fits defensively. Like you get Denny Avdi out there with a bunch of other forwards, and now Denny Avdi is going to have to do like point of attack jobs, or maybe there's situations where Denny's going to have to be a rim protector. And I think Denny, with the offensive load he's had to carry this season, he hasn't been quite the same defender. They haven't had Shaden Sharp in 2 months, and I don't even know if he's going to be playing in the play-in. But he's another guy who really struggles defensively.
He played recently.
Okay, he's back. So Shaden Sharp, another one of the weaker defenders on the roster. Scoot Henderson, I think, is mostly fine, but not really adding value defensively in any way. Not a turnover generator, not someone you can rely on to be your primary point of attack guy. Drew Holiday, I think, again, really solid point of attack defender, really switchable man defender, but not a guy at this point you want chasing everyone around screens all the time. Jeremy Grant can be your weak side rim protector, but he's got some limitations on the ball. He's not a great screen navigator. So I don't think they can string together these higher level defensive units that do a lot of things well without just completely sacrificing any semblance of offense and just getting rid of all of your spacing and all of your ball handlers on the court. Like, yeah, if you go to a lineup of Drew Holiday, Matisse Thybulle, Jeremy Grant, Rob Williams, and Donovan Clingan, that's a pretty freaking awesome defensive unit. But now who's creating, who's spacing the floor? Basically nobody besides Drew. But then you can go to like a more offense-centric lineup with Denny and Drew in your backcourt. You can get Tumani Kamara can still be out there for those lineups because he's been shooting the ball well. You can get Clingan at the 5 and then take your pick of one of their wings, Chris Murray. I don't know, but their bigger problem is that they turn the ball over at an extremely high rate. So even when they go to these defensively slanted lineups, even when they string together good half-court defensive possessions, they are just turning the ball over so much, and they're all like careless live ball turnovers that allow the other team to get out and run and get easy stuff in transition. So you're already starting at a disadvantage in that regard with setting your defense. And then I just don't think they're an elite offensive team. Like some of these issues would be offset if it was, we're just going to outgun teams. Like we have this high powered transition offense, but they don't. They're like a solid offense. And I really think Denny's style of creation with the way he relies on, unset defenses with the head of steam, the way his driving style is very contact reliant, trying to get defenders off balance, use the decelerations to draw fouls. And I think once teams start to shrink those driving gaps because they don't have elite shooters, and then also the whistle tightens up a little bit in the playoffs, Denny's not going to get the same sort of downhill opportunities. So I think there's just a lot working against Portland in terms of immediate playoff translation. I think there's a nice core in place with Denny, with Kamara, with Clingan, with some of these other guys off the bench. But as a cohesive playoff unit, I just don't think they have a real shot on either side of the ball to make any sort of noise.
Yeah, so Portland is easily one of the teams for me. They're in the bottom part of this tier. I just to, I guess, further add to your point, in any 5-man lineup this season for Portland, I don't know why I said 5-man lineup. Like there's a way for Portland to run a lineup with 3 players on the floor. That's just one of the most like unnecessary add-ons to a statement ever. Great job, Sean. But in any lineup this season that includes Denny Avdia, we're only going to focus on the top 4 lineups this season that have at least played close to 100 minutes. It's 96 minutes. It's the 4th group that includes Denny. They've also had a bunch of different injuries, so it's been a bunch of weird lineup groupings on the floor this season for Portland. All of them except one, all of these groups are have a nearly a 19% turnover percentage, with the only one that does not have a turnover percentage of close to 19%. Is a group with Shaden Sharp, Chris Murray, Tumani Kamara, Denny Avdia, and Donovan Clingan, and that group's turnover percentage is 17.4%, so they're just about at 18%. Mind you, the league average from a team perspective, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Los Angeles Lakers are both tied for 16th at 14.6%. The Portland Trailblazers are dead last in the NBA in turnover percentage at a ridiculous 16.9%. They are last by almost a whole percent. Like the gap between them and the next closest playoff team is 1.2%, which is just like insane. Which is really frustrating because Portland's a really, really good offensive rebounding team. Like all the lineup indicators and stuff like that, like they rebound the basketball at an extremely high level on the offensive end, which is, I would assume, part of the reason why that, their offense is perfectly fine. Like normally a team that has the indicators from a turnover perspective that Portland has, you would imagine they're one of the worst offenses of all time because they're literally like 5 percentage points below average, especially in groups with Denny on the floor. And again, I think to your point, you could kind of point that to some of his creation or his style of creation. But the fact that they, are able to have a respectable offense is a credit to how they crash. And you got to give them some credit for that. But Portland is just, they're fine. They're scrappy. They play really freaking hard. But, I mean, playing really, really hard doesn't necessarily mean you're playing well. I think they've had some incredible luck this season with the West being very top heavy. And that's largely due to injuries and trades and stuff like that. Dallas, we expected to be a little bit better than what they were. Memphis, we expected to not have the really weird season that they had. I think we kind of expected even teams like New Orleans to be better than what they were. So Portland probably got lucky. Golden State, clearly, obviously, as well. Like what the abomination of Golden State and the Clippers through the first 20 games of the year or whatever it was. So Portland definitely got lucky, but they're easily the weakest of the Western Conference teams.
To your point about the offensive rebounding, it's really tough to translate to the playoffs when your only good offensive quality is your offensive rebounding. So if we break it up into the three factors that go into an offensive rating, they're 24th in the league in true shooting percentage as an offense. They are 30th, like you said, in the league in turnovers, and they're third in offensive rebounding. What happens against these great playoff teams is they just find a way to neutralize you on the glass. And then what do you have? You have a poor shooting team that turns the ball over a ton. And we've seen a signal that they can't score on good defenses. As in the half court, over the entire season against top 10 defenses, they are dead last among playoff teams with an offensive rating of 89. They are scoring 0.89 points per half court possession against top 10 defenses. And they're just like an okay transition team. So if you're a poor half court offense, you've got a bad transition defense because you can't set your transition defense. You're going to lose the turnover battle. There's just so much working against Portland, and what we talk about translates to playoff basketball, that I just think they're a noticeably weaker team than anyone else. Who else did you have in this tier? What was your next team up?
My next team up in this tier were the Orlando Magic. I just don't believe in them at all. That's really poor analysis, but I just don't believe in them, man. Like Orlando, for one, the half court offense, it just they are such a frustrating team because they so very clearly like have the talent. They're a really talented group. I think in a vacuum, I think Desmond Bane has actually been a good player for them.
Really good
this season. But I think the problem is, man, two of their best players consistently. Now, I mean, granted, you have had some success, specifically when I think Jalen Suggs is so vital for them. Jalen Suggs, Desmond Bane, Franz, Paolo, Wendell Carter has a net rating of plus 10 over the duration of the season. Really just Suggs on the floor at all with the combination of those three is just money. Him, Bane, and Paolo's a plus 9. Him, Bane, and Wagner's a plus 2. All four is a plus 10 almost. Bane, Wagner, and Paolo with no Jalen Suggs is a minus 14.3, which is insane. I don't know. Like, is there something I'm missing with Orlando that I just don't buy into their half court offense? I don't buy into their offense. They don't shoot the ball well. I don't know, man. I just feel like they've significantly underperformed their talent level this season. And it's because they just simply can't consistently fit Paolo and Franz on the floor together. And I think we've seen enough from a playoff sample size that, Paolo's going to go off and, get his numbers inefficiently. But they're not good enough to compete, I think, with any of the teams out east. And I think they are. I don't think Miami's very good either. That's a spoiler, but Miami gets the SPO BAM, tax bump, if you will, for me to believe in them slightly more than Orlando. But if either one of those teams made it out, dude, they're getting blitzed by both Detroit and Boston. So, what are we doing?
Yeah, I referenced earlier that offensive rating from Portland. They have the worst offensive rating of any playoff team against top 10 defenses. Orlando has the third worst half court offense against top 10 defenses with a 92 offensive rating. Now they're a little bit better in transition. That has been a point of emphasis for them this season. Playing a lot earlier in the clock, getting out and running. What do you say?
What was that? What was that half court number?
92.3 points per 100 possessions in the half court against top 10 defenses. It ain't great. It ain't great. But I think also with Orlando, what rubs me the wrong way is, like you said, you can't really fit any lineups with Paolo and Franz out there for a few different reasons. Like, one, neither of them are shooters, but then neither of them can play the five. So you're already handicapped in your roster construction because you have two non-spacers not playing the five. But then also neither of them grab offensive rebounds. So you're eating up the two biggest forward positions, and neither of them are offensive rebounders. So when you have them both out there, now you lose a lot of your possession advantage along with those spacing issues. And all this stuff starts to add up, man. And then it's like, yeah, Paolo and Franz, neither of them are these hyper efficient on-ball creators. Like, yeah, if you had Shea out there dropping 66% true shooting on on-ball creation play types, then a lot of these issues are negated. But that's just not the case with Orlando. Neither of these guys are super efficient creators. So along with the lack of offensive rebounding, the lack of spacing, the fact that Paolo even isn't going to really add value defensively in any meaningful way outside of just being a pretty switchable big body, they're just already limited in the types of lineups they can field out there. Any lineup they gear towards more defense, they're just sacrificing all of their space, all of their ball handling, all of their playmaking. Now they're going to start to turn the ball over and miss shots. They start to go for a more offensive slant, and then they're just not good enough offensively to offset some of the defensive issues. And so you run into this thing where, like, they have moments where they look kind of good, certain lineups where they look kind of good. They're capable of beating up on bad teams, but anytime they get up against a good team, they just aren't good on either side of the ball because they just clearly cannot compete. A, from a talent perspective, B, from a just lineup fit perspective. And yeah, it's just been a serious limitations for them all season. We've talked about it plenty of times. I personally just don't think Paolo and Franz is the duo moving forward. I think you got to choose one or the other. Continue to build with Suggs, Black, Bane, some of these other guys. But yeah, they don't have a strong signal in any regard. So yeah, we've heard all year about how, well, they haven't been healthy once they get healthy. And while health has been a major issue for this Orlando team, we've seen year after year now where even when they're at full strength, the lineups they put out there just are not strong enough to compete at a meaningful playoff level. Like, you might get a game off of a good team. You might get a couple games. You might force a Cleveland to 7 a couple years ago. But in order to make a meaningful run, I do think we're going to have to see this group break up a little bit. We're going to have to see them reshape the margins. And it'll be interesting to see what that looks like if they miss the playoffs outright with a play-in exit, or if they get into the first round against, like you said, Detroit or Boston and just get blitzed in the first round. I guess the one kind of argument you could sell me on to have Orlando a little bit higher is that historically when they go to these heavy defensive slants, they dominate rebounding, and then Paolo kind of does a little bit of enough heavy lifting on offense to get them these grinded out wins where they'll win a playoff game 94-91. Or last year against Boston, like, they were clearly the worst outmatched team, but they kept a lot of those games close, and there were a few games that came down to the wire. So it's like, if you want to make the argument, I do think Orlando is a step above Portland in that regard, because I do think they have so much more offensive talent, like more guys they can turn to create a shot and run off a ball screen and do all that stuff. But in terms of projecting them up to a higher level against some of the better teams in either conference, they're just clearly notches below on both sides of the ball. And so Orlando was my next team up as well. They were my next team above the Blazers. You brought up the Heat. They're my next team. I have the Heat in this tier with the Magic, just one spot above. Kind of a lot of the same issues. Like, I think there's some clunky offense there. I do think the way they play in the open floor, the way they move the ball, I do think they have a lot more shooting than Orlando, so that's something they can go to. Of course, like, you get Norman Powell out there, you get Tyler Hero out there. Bam's been shooting the 3 now. Khalil Ware can space the floor, so they can go to more space-heavy lineups. But the selling point for Miami is, like you said, Spoelstra, Bam, and then the fact that they can field out extremely good defensive lineups, and that's just annoying to deal with for any playoff team. They have a similar issue going on where any lineup where they start to prioritize shooting, ball handling, and scoring talent, you get weak defenders on the court. But then any lineup where you start to go size, athleticism, switchability, now you lose a lot of spacing and shot creation. So they don't really have that ability to construct elite two-way lineups like they could when they had Jimmy Butler back in the day. But they're still just a team that can put out elite defensive lineups that can switch across the board. Eric Spoelstra is an evil scientist of a coach. Bam Adebayo unlocks so much versatility on both sides of the ball. If you want to switch up your offense and start running stuff through him up top and go to some dribble handoff, away screen actions, all that good stuff. They can go double big, they can go single big, they can go small. There's so many different things they can do with those lineups, and I think the lineup versatility really matters. This season, they've actually been a great team against the top 10 defenses. They have the ninth best half court offensive rating against top 10 defenses. They also have a top 10 defensive rating in the half court against top 10 offenses. So they've performed well against good teams while having that transition signal, while having a lot of lineup construction and or lineup flexibility, I should say. And then they've also dealt with their own share of injuries. They just happen to be. I think what rubs me the wrong way with Miami is they happen to be playing their worst basketball at the worst possible time. Like they were in position to get to like a 6 seed, and then they strung together a stretch of like 3 and 9. And I think when you're playing your worst basketball going into the playoffs while trying to win, that's clearly a signal that you haven't yet figured out the variables you need to figure out to actually be competitive in the postseason.
Yeah, I mean, with Miami, I feel like I've been more negative on Miami all year. Or not all year. I think at the beginning of the season it was fun, especially when we were talking about their point. I mean, the way that they score in transition, good God. The way that they score in transition, how unique it was, again, and maybe it was more or less the uniqueness about their offense and about their system, rather like, oh, okay, Miami made it completely just left turn and a pivot that is just completely different than the style of basketball that we're used to seeing a Miami team play, especially over the past several years. I think the good thing with Miami is, they are top 10 out of the playoff teams against top 10 teams in terms of winning the transition battle. They have a positive transition, transition net rating, if you will, or just transition net in general. So they do a good job of winning a transition. They're going to, they can field lineups with shooters and stuff like that with Tyler Hero and like you said, Bam shooting it, Norman Powell. They really lack the lineup flexibility though, where, okay, cool, we're going to lean into the defense because for crying out loud, we got to get some stops. Okay, that's fine. But now we have absolutely no spacing and Bam shooting. Our offense is basically just Bam shooting 20-foot contested sidestep mid-range jump shots. And that's just not sustainable whatsoever. And I remember the last time we had an in-depth conversation on Miami, I think my ending or resting place on Miami was, this is cool, but I think we are very clearly at a point now where this style of offense is just incredibly gimmicky. And I hate that that comes off as negative as it does, but I just don't think, okay, gimmicky might not be the word. I think that the teams that have done it were maybe the two worst teams to do it. And the reason why Memphis was bad, because it just doesn't fit your person. It's cool to enable the other guys and enable Jaren and enable Desmond Bain and some of the other guys, but your highest paid player and your best player is John Morant, who lives in spread pick and roll. Okay, cool. We need you. You're actively taking the ball out of your best player's hands. Miami, it doesn't work because Miami doesn't have, in a playoff setting, one, they don't have the roster flexibility to field two-way lineups. But Miami also does have the guys that I think can consistently, in a playoff setting, win and create advantage in isolation.
That's a good point. I do think against the average team, they have isolation creators. Like Jaime Jaquez, I think has been a really skilled driver and post player for his position, especially. And I look at you get into a Boston series. Oh, I don't even know if they can face Boston, but just hypothetically, if it was a Boston series, and it's who's Jaime Jaquez going to attack one-on-one? Detroit,
just Detroit.
And yeah, I was going to say, I don't even need to go to Boston. Detroit, yeah, who's he going to attack on Detroit when he's got a Sar Thompson on him or Ron Holland or Cade Cunningham? These big, lengthy, athletic defenders. You look at Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell can really win an advantage in a straight line drive. But again, if you have a high level point of attack defender on him and a packed paint, like you said, because they maybe can't go to the spacing configurations that they need to. Now it's you, Davion Mitchell. We need you to not only beat Ron Holland, you have to then score at Isaiah Stewart in the paint with a floater or something like that. And it's they have guys who are skilled enough to put the ball on the floor and attack one-on-one. They don't have anyone you look at and you're like, this guy is an elite isolation player. The type of offense I'd envision, or type of roster, rather, that I'd envision running this type of offense successfully would be the Celtics, where we have Jaylen Brown and Tatum who both can very consistently win their matchup. And then we're going to spray it out to shooters. We're going to move the ball. All these guys can make quick decisions. Or even like the Clippers when they had Kawhi and Harden. And it was like these guys can both win their matchups very consistently. Maybe without Zoo on the court, though, because you want more space in that type of system. Or you can even put Zoo in the dunker and have him rotate around and do all that good stuff.
Low-key Minnesota in non-Rudy lineups even.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like
and Randall can both win their matchups. I would assume Who can even win a matchup, especially in early offense situations. The Hornets against certain teams have a few guys who can win their matchups, but I also think one of their limitations is against, and we'll talk about it, against an elite switching defense. I guess the point we're trying to make with Miami specifically, bringing it back to the more relevant talking point, is it's really important to have guys in the half court who can consistently win their matchups one-on-one without needing a defensive breakdown, because these elite playoff defenses are going to tighten up, and you have to just beat your matchup and force them to make decisions behind the play, force help, force rotations. And Miami doesn't have a roster of guys that you look at. Their offense is built around winning those types of advantages. And they don't have a roster of guys that you look at and it's like, I expect you to be able to beat your matchup consistently if it's a great defense. And then if they're like, okay, we know we can't win them with offense, we're going to go to a defensive slant. They're just sacrificing all offensive semblance and going all defense. And I just don't think, like you said, they have lineup versatility, but none of those lineups field out strong offenses and defenses at the playoff level. And that's is that the most important thing in the playoffs? Like the ability to field out strong two-way lineups? Especially one lineup, like this is your one lineup. I feel like every high-level playoff team you look at, they have one lineup that's like when they're on the court, you just know there's not much you can poke at. Like look at the Pacers last year. We knew if they had Halliburton, Nembhard, Nesmith, Siakam, and Turner out there just wasn't much you could do to limit them on either side of the ball. And like OKC, I mean, they have like 8 different lineups, but their main lineup last year in the playoffs, I believe, was Shea, Dort, J-Dub, Chet, Hartenstein, or even Caruso instead of Hartenstein actually might have been their more used lineup with J-Dub at the 4 and then Dort and Caruso both out there. I mean, I even look at Denver. They always just run the same 5. Like, give or take a few players with the MPJ trade and stuff, but this year it's probably going to be Murray, Watson, Johnson, Gordon, Jokic, I'd imagine. They probably go to Watson more than Christian Brown. The Spurs are going to have their lineup. The Pistons have their main 5 that they always go to. You need that one lineup that's like, we have a strong offense, we have a strong defense. And if not, I just don't really think you're in position to win many playoff games unless you get some outlier shooting luck or something. And I don't know if Miami is in a position to do that. But like I said, because of the defensive versatility, because of the defensive flexibility, and because of the far superior coaching, I do give Miami a very slight nod over Orlando. But same tier.
All right. I do have one more team here, but
I do too. And do you have them here because of a recent
injury? No. Am I bugging?
Okay. I have Philly here because Embiid's going to be out, I think, for the playoffs.
Oh, if Embiid's out for the playoffs, then okay. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a playoff ending injury.
I don't know the update. I don't know exactly. He has appendicitis, and I know that's brutal.
Yeah.
That is really brutal. So I don't know what the timeline is on Embiid. Maybe you can look that up real quick while I do my Philly spiel, if he's going to be available and if he'll be able to make a full recovery in time for the playoffs. I don't really know what the timetable on that is, but Philly without Embiid, I'm going to assume they're not going to have Embiid for or at least like a normal version of Embiid. They just don't have the advantage creation on offense to cover up their biggest weakness. I think Philly's biggest weakness as a roster is passing. They don't have a single high-end passer on the roster besides Kyle Lowry, who's just not even going to play. He's basically the Udonis Haslem now. They don't have a single high-level passer on the roster, so they need to rely on getting like clean, big advantages that really force the defense to commit. And when Embiid's in the middle of the floor, they can get away with it because he's going to shrink every help defender to the middle of the floor, and he's really just going to cause complete breakdowns because he demands so much attention as a scorer because of just the physically overwhelming skill set he has. But when it's just Maxey out there as your number one advantage creator and then Paul George and then VJ Edgecombe, I don't think those guys provide enough just surefire advantage creation like blow-by threat or elite pull-up three-point shooting to completely break apart defenses to where then you don't need to rely on connective passing. But they can create small advantages like Maxey turning the corner. Maxey's a big-time blow-by threat. Paul George can create nice, like he'll draw an aggressive coverage off a ball screen or off of an off ball screen. VJ Edgecombe can drive out of the slot and get out, create rim pressure that way. But in terms of standstill advantage creation without relying on connective passing, I don't think Philly has that without Embiid. And then they're just not a super elite defensive team. So again, it's this issue where I don't think they can construct an elite two-way lineup. I think they can go to some big athletic switchy lineups, but as long as you have Maxey out there, alongside Edgecombe in a kind of a small backcourt, you're going to struggle to switch against teams with bigger wings or bigger creators. They don't have much rim protection from any position, really, especially when Embiid's out there, or not out there, sorry, as their drop big presence. They're not a great rebounding team. There's just not a lot going for them. Even with Embiid on the court, I think that covers up a lot of their weaknesses, but they're still not an elite two-way team. And I think a lot of that is Embiid at this point has serious defensive limitations related to his foot speed and flexibility. Just the deepest drop big, like the most drop heavy big in the league right now. He just cannot come out of the paint and defend a pick and roll. So I think there's limitations with Embiid, without Embiid. I think at full strength, best case scenario, they have a really high ceiling just because of the offensive and defensive talent on the roster. But in terms of cohesive two-way units and the not knowingness with Embiid, I think they're in this tier.
All right, so yeah, I will be adding, I'll be adding this team to my bottom tier because we just have absolutely no clue. As a matter of fact, the update is that there is no update at all on his return to basketball activities, so we're cooked. And they're a playing team, so we're cooked, bro. Okay, so my spiel on Philly was definitely gonna be more optimistic than what it was, because I thought there's at least a slight possibility that you'd be getting Embiid back at some point, but does not seem to be the case at all. Philly, I agree with the passing weaknesses. I think that, they can do enough from a shot creation standpoint to, have, if they're fully healthy, which is just such a if, man. I think I'm at the point now where I'm just going to stop giving them credit and having the if they're healthy conversations and just assume that they're never healthy. I think I'm ready to clipper them and nuke them into the universe, and I'll just adjust really, really fast on the fly if Philly is randomly healthy one playoff run. But Maxey's obviously had a really, really great year, but he's still very clearly not this elite advantage creating passer, which just limits their ceiling a lot, especially with no Embiid in a playoff setting. And now it's just going to be a lot of tough shots from Maxey and, Paul George, and their bigs, like you said, are Andre Drummond and a Dembona. They're not a great defense at all. Their offense is fine. I was gonna give them a lot of bail because in some of the top 10 defense indicators and just some of the lineup data in general, that's just so hard to go off of because they've never had a consistent stretch with their whole group. I was so ready to give them bail and have them higher than maybe I should have, but bro, Philly's cooked. The team that I was actually going to talk about, Philly is now officially joining this tier. And there's definitely an argument to bump them up. I just don't know what to do with them. And the fact that they're going to have to win 2 playing games also does not make me feel any better about it either, is the Golden State Warriors. Now, they might be getting taxed because they have to win 2 playing games, the way that the season has gone for them with all the injuries, all the dysfunction isn't even the word, but dysfunction because of the injuries and just BS lineups they've had to kind of put on the floor at times. But I think the argument, since I do have them in this tier, I'm going to make the argument for them, and if I'm missing something, then chime in. I think Steph Curry. Steph getting back healthy. And I mean, the last time we saw Steph in a playoff setting, he was very clearly still the best player on the floor, I think. Steph was very clearly the best player in that Houston series. And it was 13 minutes, but he was the best player for those 13 minutes in game 1 against the Minnesota Timberwolves, who went on to the Western Conference Finals. And I think if they're able to have Is Kristaps healthy? Am I missing anything?
Yeah, he's healthy and he's playing
Okay.
pretty freaking good basketball.
D'Anthony Melton, Kristaps, Pods has been good. I think Pods has actually just become.
He dropped 30.
I know. I think Pods is a victim of getting memed so much because of all the dudes that have dropped 30 or like have had these stats and that he hasn't. That he's become one of the more underrated players in the league.
He's clearly just a solid basketball player. He does a lot of things well.
Yeah, he's a really solid basketball player. But Steph, Pods, D'Anthony Melton, Draymond Green, Kristaps, Gui Santos, like Steve Kerr, like they have a nucleus that I think is fine enough if they didn't have to win 2 games. If they didn't have to win 2 playing games and then also proceed to play OKC, even if they win those 2 playing games. So for that reason, and especially if I am evaluating like just the best teams flat out in general, but there's also maybe like a yin and yang or like a 50-50 split of, okay, cool, I am evaluating the best teams and who's playing the best right now and all that other stuff, while at the same time also saying like how likely do I think you're going to win a title, like in a power ranking setting, because that's how I think power rankings, I would have Golden State at the top of this tier, bottom of the next tier, if you want to call it, and say 1, path to victory, 2, they have to win 2 playing games, but also, even if we were to talk about the roster, yeah, Steph's great, Kristaps has played well, can Draymond kick it into another gear come playoff time again defensively? And do they just have the manpower, to be completely honest with you? Because I think, yeah, Steph had a great playoff series. It was very clearly the best player in that Houston series. But, I mean, they still needed Jimmy a lot to help set up and create advantages for them in that Houston series. I do legitimately worry about, again, and it's just unfortunate that they're going to have to run into OKC. I mean, hell, if it was San Antonio even, I think the only team that maybe this doesn't apply for is current day Lakers. And any playoff matchup, I'm like, dude, who's going to create the other advantage, not named Steph Curry, and just make Steph's life easier over the duration of a 7-game series? I mean, you have Kristaps in the post and stuff like that, but I don't know. I do end up lower on them, even though I think there is a argument to be made to have them higher for sure.
I think the Warriors are the weirdest team going into the playoffs for a number of reasons. I think one, like you talked about with the play-in variable, if I were ranking my list of likely contenders, the Warriors would be a lot lower for me just because the only pathway they have into the playoffs is to face OKC in round 1. And I think OKC just blitzes them. They're just a much better team on both sides of the ball. But Golden State, if we're just ranking the quality of the team, I think they have a few superpowers. For one, I brought up the importance of having one 5-man lineup that you can go to that's elite on both sides of the ball. And I think Golden State has that more than even some of the better playoff teams. Like Steph Curry, D'Anthony Melton, take your pick of a 3, Draymond and Porzingis is going to be an elite 2-way lineup basically anytime they're on the court, because the amount of rim protection and behind the play protection between Porzingis and Draymond can't be overstated. Like Draymond's mind and then Porzingis's raw physical tools as a shot blocker and rim deterrent, they're going to be able to do so many different things defensively when they plug the gaps, when they're getting aggressive on the ball, putting 2 on the ball, switching. They're going to be able to do a lot of, just because those 2 guys are on the court. I can't even imagine what it would look like with Jimmy out there. Like Jimmy, Draymond, and Porzingis would be one of the best defensive trios of really the decade. That'd be a crazy thing to witness. Even this current version of Draymond. But you also touched on one of the big weaknesses, and that's that in any lineup next to Steph, there's not going to be someone else who can consistently create their own advantage from a standstill. Like the Kristaps advantage would just be screening and getting a switch and attacking that mismatch in the mid post. But there's no real blow-by threat when Jimmy's not out there and they traded Kuminga. There's no real pull-up jump shooting threat outside of Steph. And that's going to be a really big problem because Steph can't play 48 minutes a game. And Steph on the bench, those minutes are going to really, really suck. But there's also the aspect of Steph, Draymond, and Kerr might be the most proven trio in NBA playoff history. Besides like the Spurs dynasty, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, like those dynasties, there is such a proven recipe of when you have Steph and Draymond out there and then Steve Kerr is the coach, this team doesn't really lose playoff games or they're always in position to win playoff games. And I think some of that is the synergy they have as a duo. right? Like Draymond and Steph playing off each other, that two-man game, the amount of different ways they can stress defenses. It's the fact that Steph is an offensive outlier that allows them to go to defensively slanted lineups, and then Draymond's a generational defensive talent. I think maybe I'm giving them a little bit too much credit, but there's things they've done well this season. Like they're always an elite transition defense, which is coaching and personnel. When they have Steph on the court, they're a good half court offense. Like you have to try to have a bad half court offense with Steph on the court. And if he's playing 36 minutes a game, he's healthy. You know, Steph this season averaged 31 points per 75 possessions on plus 6% relative true shooting. Like just a classic prime Steph Curry season that got overlooked because of the injury and because of some of the turmoil in Golden State. He shot 51% from mid-range, 70% at the rim, got to the line 6 times a game, which was his highest in like 7 years, or I think since the 2021 season, actually. This team just has a lot going for them. And then when they get Melton out there and some of these other guys that force turnovers, they've got guys who grab offensive rebounds. They're pretty aggressive, crashing the glass. I actually think they've been the number 2 offensive rebounding team over the past 2 months. And it's like, hey, if you can tell me that you're going to grab offensive rebounds in a Steph Curry offense, I'm listening to your case for the playoffs. But no, like you said, if we're accounting for the competition in their way to get into an actual playoff run, they'd be a lot lower for me. But I actually have them a tier above the teams we just talked about, just because I think in terms of the quality of the team, they are still capable of fielding out that really good closing and starting to a lineup. They can put out lineups that have good offense because of Steph Curry that are also great defensively in a number of ways. And then Steve Kerr is just a very proven playoff coach who's going to make all sorts of creative adjustments to put his guys in the best position to succeed. I'm more excited to just think about what this team looks like with Jimmy Butler next year. If you can get one more year out of Steph and Draymond, and Jimmy gets back to normal, because I actually was thinking about this exercise before we started recording. How many teams have a better 5-man lineup than a full strength Steph, DeAnthony Melton, Jimmy Butler, Draymond, and Porzingis? Like, that's a really freaking good lineup. They have downhill shot creation. They have really good passing. They have spacing. They have elite defense. Like Melton, Jimmy, Draymond, and Porzingis as your defensive front line. Yeah, that is a crazy unit, in my opinion. So that's what I'm more excited for. But even without Jimmy, I do still think that lineup with Steph on the court is really strong on both sides of the ball. And I think they have just a proven playoff variable that I don't see with a Miami, a Philly, and Orlando, and especially Portland. So I'm a little bit higher on Golden State, but that's been the theme throughout the season. Like I remember even when we ranked our Western Conference teams, I came out a lot higher on Golden State.
All right, so I will bump them up to the back end of my next tier, which is easily my biggest tier. And the way I would describe my next tier is full of teams that I could potentially, based off the quality of the team, not saying based on first round matchup that they are going to win or whatever the case may be, but based off the quality of the team that I could potentially see you winning a series, but that's it. Like I don't think you're a conference finals or a team that could realistically make a push to an NBA finals, hopefully winning an NBA championship. So for me, that tier starts with Golden State. I don't know if that's how you would describe your tier as well. This is easily the biggest tier for me. The next team I guess I'll talk about then, I will talk about, this is even in order, but I think, just to keep it on the West Coast. To keep it in California, actually, I'm going to bring up the Lakers, because I'm just going to get the Lakers conversation out of the way, even though this isn't in order. I don't have the Lakers immediately after the Suns. I mean, crap. Well, that's spoiling that. Immediately after the Warriors, I do have the Lakers higher. But I'm going to get in front of the Lakers curve. If the Lakers were guaranteed healthy, I'm not fully sure if they would be in that next tier, although I was as close as I ever had been to putting them in that next tier. Now, the good news is with LA is that I think Luka is going to push to make a return, not for game 1. I think it's almost confirmed he's for sure not playing early on, game 1, game 2 in the series. Game 1 against Houston is going to be the 18th, which is Saturday. If I can count on the fly, looking at the calendar at the top right of my computer. But Luka's definitely not going to play game 1, game 2. But I think if it's a close series, if it's 1-1, you're able to split. And game 3 in Houston, the good thing about first round series is they definitely drag out longer. They space them out with more days in between games. So maybe Luka's able to make a return game 3. Austin, I also think with Luka to go try to do some extreme therapy and rush back. I think if you're to make an argument for the Lakers, it's that, dude, they just have so much half court creation. They have so much half court creation in a playoff setting, and LeBron is playing really good basketball over the past like week and a half. It's absurd. The jump shots come back.
Can I pause you because it's more than a week and a half. So I went and pulled the numbers. In 500 minutes this season without either Reeves or Luka, LeBron is averaging 31 points and 11 assists per 75 on 60% true shooting, and the Lakers have a 121 offensive rating. So this is the question I wanted to ask you because like there's this very clear signal that LeBron can still ramp up his offensive volume. Like he has the ability to still ramp up his offensive volume to a number one,
time, by the way.
number one creator level, right? He can ramp it up to that level. And it's different though. It's not the spread pick and roll stuff we've become used to. It's like, I'm going to find my mismatch with these guard to guard actions. And I'm going to post up and I'm going to like, he's just a post god. Like that's the best way of putting it. These last few games have just been find me my mismatch, clear out, and I'm going to pick apart every defense. And also, LeBron just had a random rejuvenation of being like a top 5 transition player of all time. I don't know where that came from. He's third in the league at 7 points a game in transition, scoring 1.3 points per possession, which is in the 84th percentile, I believe. Just one of the best transition players in the league. He's leading the league in fast break points as a 23-year-old. So that's a pretty cool, as a 23-year-old. In his 23rd season, sorry, that was a pretty bad slip up. LeBron still has this ability to ramp up his offensive volume to a number one level in these spot minutes, right? Like where it's 8 or 9 minutes a game without Luka or Reeves. And then we get this 4-game stretch to end the year where he does it again. They go 4-0, I believe, besides the Thunder game where LeBron didn't play. No, they lost to Dallas. So they go 3-1 to close out the season and secure home court advantage with LeBron at the helm doing it for entire games. LeBron, I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to say anything too crazy. If LeBron is playing at this level as an offensive number one, they can take a game from Houston or two, like even without Luka or Reeves playing. And it's like, I would not be completely shocked. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that the Lakers are up 2-1 and like Luka or Reeves comes back for a game 4. I think that is a very real scenario. Just because when LeBron's out there and he's playing at this level and he's creating as much offense as he is, they can put out like pretty competent defensive lineups around him. Like I don't feel bad about a lineup on the floor of LeBron, Smart, LaRavia, Rui, and Ayton. I don't feel bad about that lineup. They're big, they're athletic, they're switchable, they can space the floor, and LeBron can do his thing. And they're going to get out and run in transition. They're going to force turnovers. And I also don't feel bad if you replace Rui with Luke Kennard and get an extra shooter on the court, an extra ball handler. Luke Kennard's really thrived in that secondary point guard role in the place of Reeves. And it's like you said, when they do get to full strength, they have just this button that they can push where their half-court offense is so dynamic and so skilled that they can pretty much do whatever they want. And I was thinking about it. In a Houston series, you get Reed Shepherd on the court. LeBron's just going to look for that matchup every single play. It's going to be, let's get Reed Shepherd. And then Houston's going to have to rotate, and they're a really good defense. They're really good at rotating. So I do think they can do that extremely well. But it's like that LeBron against Reed Shepherd will be good offense every time. And it's like, do you avoid that mismatch by hedging? Now you got Luke Kennard freeing up on a ghost screen or something like that. That's a really tough scenario to put Houston in, but they need Reed Shepherd on the court because of the spacing aspect of things. And then it's like, if Reed Shepherd's not on the court, now we're going to trap Kevin Durant at half and good luck creating offense because we have all this size that we're just going to pack the paint with. I don't know, man. The Lakers are a weird team, so I'll just spoil it. I didn't rank them. I did not rank the Lakers because I didn't know what to do with them because I feel like the LeBron-led team is still pretty good. And then I think the team with Luka and Reeves would be in my top 10. And I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to do with the Lakers. So I didn't rank them yet. I will before the end of this show. But do you agree with what I'm saying about the Lakers, like with the LeBron-led units and like what they're doing? Because I don't want to over-index on the recent stretch because the competition hasn't been up there, but LeBron athletically looks amazing, dude. Like, and he's just he's the smartest player ever. And he'll just pick apart whatever the defense tries to do, like skip passes, dump offs. DeAndre Ayton's attacking mismatches too. So it's tough to go small against these guys. And Houston in their bigger lineups can't space the floor. And then I don't know, man. LA is really interesting to me. And I kind of over indexed on just the LA versus Houston matchup. LA has problems against other teams that they can't solve, but the Lakers are a good team still, I think, because of the way LeBron looks.
I never thought I'd see the day. I'm almost tearing up over here. Never thought I'd see the day where Tyler's over here just singing the Lakers praises and making me even feel like I'm somehow lower on the Lakers. Oh my goodness! Wow, just pulling at all the right heartstrings right now, aren't you? I think the thing with the Lakers too, and with the LeBron stuff, dude, over the past 10 games, for the Lakers, LeBron on his isolation possessions, including pass outs, the Lakers half court offense is generating 1.1 points per possessions. Those are the, pitch post isolations, the nail isolations, after we get a switch, stuff like that. On his post ups, they're generating 1 point per possession in the half court. They're not turning the ball over a lot either on any of these possessions. A 6% turnover percentage as a team on those isolation possessions, and an 8% turnover percentage on those post up possessions. And then as a scorer, I think LeBron's not been a good pick and roll scorers, which is, makes sense why we've seen a significantly lower dosage of it, with him trying to actively score out of it. When the Lakers go pick and roll, LeBron is mostly to try to get a mismatch and get a switch and then play out of that. But the fact that, again, LeBron, the jump shot is mostly back, because over this recent stretch, he's shooting 47% on mid-range twos. He's hitting the three ball at a better clip. He's shooting 70% at the rim nearly as well. So, first option.
Let's say on the season, he's shooting 75% at the rim on over 6 attempts a game at 41 years old. Like, it's incomprehensible.
Yeah, what he's been able to do is just absurd. I think that I just went ahead and put them here for now. I saw it would make sense that I would ding them for the current status of the team because of Luka and AR. And I feel even better. No, that's not the same thing, because Embiid we practically know is not coming back. Where with LA, there's at least the chance of Luka and Austin returning. If this team's at full strength, then yeah, they're very clearly top 10. Now we're in the top 10. They do have some. The biggest concerns would be the fact that can they consistently field two-way lineups, the fact that they are so, from a lineup data standpoint, they are so dependent on Marcus Smart being a part of those groups with Austin, with Luka and LeBron. The problem is that they cannot play Marcus Smart for 48 minutes. And Jared Vanderbilt just is not a playoff
player.
They
might. That's what JJ Redick did in the playoffs last year. 5 men the whole entire game.
He did. That's crap. He did. Yeah, I forgot about that. I think Jared Vanderbilt is a playoff rotation player. We've talked about that ad nauseum. I think, which is also why it was really, really funny that the fake outrage at JJ for his altercation with Jared Vanderbilt, for crying out loud. Like, dude, JJ's won back-to-back 50-win seasons with the Lakers, bro. We were in. Darvin Ham was the coach for 2 years. I think they're not going to fire him because Jared Vanderbilt's upset about something. Dude, the fact that they can, if you want hope for like a Lakers outlier title run, which is basically what the next tier for me would have been, which is basically, I don't think it's going to happen, but if it does, I'm not surprised. It's again just the fact that they have so much freaking offensive firepower, to the point where it is basically damn if you do, damn if you don't. Dude, Luke and our LeBron, as when this team's back healthy, as your guys running the second group, and I think they have a plus 10 net rating with those two guys on the court together. Their instant chemistry has been just really, really fun to see because of the shooting and all the stuff you could do with Luke Kennard as gravity as a shooter. And the fact that he can be a secondary ball handler, like you mentioned, and make decisions without turning the ball over. And they can field those groups with defensive slanted players to kind of round it out with Hayes and Smart and Laravia. And you can honestly call it a day for a 4-minute stretch at a time while you give Luka and Austin a rest. And with the starting group, it's okay, cool. Is Marcus Smart hit his open threes? Because if he does, then it's going to be Luka, Austin, and Braun attacking one-on-one most of the game because you can't help. Or it's Aiden attacking a mismatch. And if you want to help off Aiden, God forbid Aiden catches the ball, that's the easy dunk, and we're going the other way. So the fact that the Lakers have just so much firepower, bro, and can LeBron just hold it together for 2-ish games and see where we're at going back to Houston? So LA's a really weird team, like you said.
They're weird, and the defensive ceiling isn't there with this group, and that's kind of what limits them from being a top tier contender. Like, maybe if I considered them as a top 5 team, and then Luka and Reeves got hurt, I'd be more confident bumping them up a tier on my new rankings, just because it's like that outlier ceiling is still so high. But there are certain teams that the Lakers just will not be able to defend at all in the playoffs, and I think that's just an issue. Like, we've seen, they have zero chance of guarding OKC. Like, they just cannot guard OKC. I also think they wouldn't be able to guard San Antonio because of their athleticism. I don't think they can guard Denver. Boston always has their number on both sides of the ball. I think effective switching without giving up mismatches can neutralize a lot of what makes the Lakers great on offense. And obviously, they still have blow-by threats, they still have post-up threats, and they still can attack switching. But you don't get that signal of like these 120 offensive ratings against the best defenses in the league because of what they're able to do. And then also the fact that the Lakers don't have elite two-way shooters. Like, when you get Jake LaRavia out there, or like you said, Vanderbilt, you're going to lose some space. Marcus Smart's a little bit streaky as a shooter. When you get Luke Kennard out there as your shooting threat, he's not going to be a guy who's going to get up 10 threes, but also there's defensive limitations there who's then going to be attacked. And it's the same thing you run into where there's that inability to construct one elite two-way lineup that can just start and close games, or even throughout the course of games, elite two-way lineups. I think they can construct elite offensive lineups all the time, like whether you have Luka and Reeves, whether you have Luka or Reeves, whether you have LeBron and Reeves, LeBron and Luka, LeBron and Kennard, like you mentioned. They're always going to have a strong offense, but that two-way ability starts to be their downfall, and then they start to over-rely on guys like Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, Jake LaRavia playing bigger minutes, and everything kind of works backwards from there. So I'm going to move the Lakers into this tier that I had the Warriors in. I don't know where I'm going to rank them yet, but this is the group that they're going to find themselves in. You brought up the Suns. They're the next team for me. I think the Suns are another team like Miami that's peaking negatively at the worst possible time. They haven't been as good as they were to start the season for a number of reasons. Talk to me about the Suns. What are your general thoughts?
I think with Phoenix, it's one, like, their half court play against top 10 teams is really, really concerning. They are what's this, 14th? Did I get that right? They're bottom 6. They have a bottom 6 half-court offense amongst the 20 playoff teams against top 10 defenses. They also do not have a generous half-court. They don't have a good half-court defense against the top 10 offenses. They have the 6th worst defense against top 10 offenses in the league as well, which nets out like a bottom 4, bottom 3 net rating in the half-court against top 10 teams. And I think my biggest problem with Phoenix entering the playoffs is pretty simple, is that it's almost similar to Philly. You brought up the playmaking for Philly. I think I don't really know how Phoenix against, the teams it's going to take for them to make a sustained playoff run, how they're going to consistently create advantages in the half court. And it's basically going to be Devin Booker and he's as skilled as all hell, but Devin Booker, go get 30 on like +1 true shooting, and we're gonna be just struggle bucketing our way to the rest of the way. It is not like Phoenix has. I mean, Phoenix does overall just a fine job at winning in transition. They're okay. They're, I think, perfectly average at taking care of the ball. They just don't have any overwhelming statistical indicator. On top of the fact that I just think they have clear weaknesses, while at the same time, like, Booker is awesome, and Booker is an advantage, a creative advantage in it of itself, and you're gonna get put into a lot of 2-on-1 scenarios because you're running Devin Booker off a middle of the floor pin down, and now we're gonna get Oso open layup because the big is gonna show up higher, or Oso's able to make a decision out of the short roll and things of that nature. So I think Phoenix is very clearly better than all those other teams. I actually feel better about putting Golden State in this tier now. because I don't know if Phoenix is a tier better than Golden State. But I think Phoenix, just the fact that I don't trust their half court play on either end of the floor, and also the fact that, dude, we've had this conversation a lot. I think Colin Gillespie is just better for their starting five than Jalen Green is.
Yes.
I don't think Jalen Green's a great basketball player, and I think the fit here has been kind of weird. So I don't know. Is there anything I missed on Phoenix?
I think the one thing that you didn't touch on that I do want to mention with Phoenix that they're really good at is the possession battle. They're extremely good at the possession battle for a number of reasons. One, did you know that they're actually the number one team in forcing turnovers? Like even ahead of Detroit and OKC. This season, Phoenix is number one in forced turnovers. And that's a number of guys just being extremely active defensive playmakers. Like Jordan Goodwin's been a revelation. He's a crazy defensive playmaker. Grayson Allen's been active. Ryan Dunn. They brought in Haywood Highsmith, and he's been really good. Colin Gillespie's a solid defender. Like you said, I think he's better for the starting five. And that's kind of my big hang up with Phoenix. It's that their offense has been a complete disaster over the last 2 months, which happens to correlate with when Jalen Green came back. And they've had some injuries during that stretch. Don't get me wrong. But they cannot figure out how to distribute the love, man. They just have so many different guys trying to do the same thing at the same time. And they don't really have any direction as an offense. Like when you get Oso Iguodala out there and you start to run some delay stuff, you get Booker and Gillespie running off ball. You're able to weaponize Jalen Green's athleticism, turning the corner off of handoffs and as a cutter. That is pretty nice. But when you get Mark Williams out there as a more traditional spread pick and roll big look, I don't really know what the offensive direction is. It kind of turns into your turn, my turn between a bunch of guys who aren't hyper efficient scorers. Like Dylan Brooks eats up a lot of possessions trying to create. Jalen Green eats up a lot of possessions trying to create. Devin Booker, for as skilled as he is, isn't the type of guy who's going to create a ton of high leverage buckets where it's like, I can get to the rim very easily, or I'm an elite pull-up three-point shooter. A lot of it is the mid-range shot making, and that just isn't the most efficient. It's a lot of he does have a lot of foul drawing craft, and that's efficient, of course. But he's not the type of big-time advantage creator that you can give the ball to consistently, and it's like Devin Booker, go get us a good shot. It'll end up mostly just being his own tough shot making or own struggle bucket, as you kind of alluded to. So they win on the margins in certain ways. Like I said, they force a lot of turnovers. They take decent care of the ball. They're about league average. They're a really good rebounding team, especially in the offensive glass. And that's a Mark Williams stat again, a big time offensive rebounder. And so there's ways they win, but there's also ways they lose. And it's that lack of half court offensive versatility while also not being a top tier defensive team. So some of these half court offensive limitations would be livable if they were a Detroit on defense or an OKC on defense. But besides forcing turnovers, they're a mostly average defensive team. Like they don't have an extremely high level rim protector. They don't have a ton of high level point of attack defenders. They're not all that switchable. And they do play a lot of limited defenders. Jalen Green's got his limitations. Booker has his limitations. Gillespie's a solid defender, but he's undersized. Same with Grayson Allen. He's limited athletically. So I just don't think they have, again, we're going to keep coming back to this, the ability to construct an elite two-way lineup, even just an elite offensive lineup. I don't think they'll be able to construct in the playoffs. So they're limited to me, but I do think they're a noticeably better team than what we talked about with Philly, Miami, or Orlando because of some of their superpowers. Like they do have a lot of great three-point shooters and they can get hot. They have that offensive ceiling that they get to on occasion. They do have a lot of ball handlers. Like pretty much everybody in their rotation, I feel good about putting the ball on the deck and making a decision. Guys like Royce O'Neal, just really smart role players. Haywood Highsmith, again, I think is a pretty nice role player. I love that they added him mid-season. The rebounding is a legit superpower at times. Their ability to force turnovers, and that is the main thing for me. Because if you're forcing a lot of turnovers, you're going to get a lot of easy runouts, and then the half-court offense isn't as much of an issue because you're getting 10 to 20 points a game off of runouts. So that would be the argument for Phoenix. I think they're a little bit better than some of these other teams, but I actually still had them below the Warriors. The Suns, to me, were the bottom of this next tier. Then I've got two teams who kind of fit a similar profile to me in this tier, and we can compare and contrast because I didn't really know who to go with. I also had the Hawks and the Raptors in this tier, and I assume you did as well. So who'd you end up higher on between Atlanta and Toronto?
I had Toronto slightly higher than Atlanta.
Sell me on that case.
The fact that Toronto's just going to win in transition and win the margins and win possessions, all the stuff that we've really been talking about. Now, Atlanta has been playing just absurd basketball as of late. and really as of late, meaning over the past month and a half. I do wonder, Tyler, how much, and this is so not fair, dude.
It's fair. It's fair.
You play nobody.
Yeah,
Like no
that
Judge
schedule.
Dyson.
It's dirt. It's dirt.
Dyson, CJ Naw, Jalen Johnson, and Yekin Kongu have been phenomenal this season. At 331 minutes, they have a plus 21 net rating. Now, major pause on that. They played that stretch has been the 331 minutes has been largely over this recent stretch of basketball where they've again just played absolutely nobody. And outside of that, if you look at any of their other major lineup indicators, like they have all the indicators of being a pretty average team. And I think Toronto, at the very least, their defensive versatility, and they can make it really, really ugly and grimy, and they're going to win in transition on both ends. I think Toronto's the better team, more built for the playoffs. Even though Toronto, to go back to some of the stuff we've kind of talked about, Toronto is definitely like not peaking at the right time. They've not played their best basketball as of late, where to your point, Atlanta has been playing their best basketball as of late. So, I mean, if you wanted to have that conversation, we could. Against top 10 defense, Toronto does a better job of, they force more turnovers than they turn the ball over, so they're going to win the turnover battle in those matchups. Their half-court offense is maybe underrated if we're specifically looking at the top 10 against top 10 defenses in the half court. But the defensive versatility, the fact that can Brandon Ingram and IQ be just barely enough offensive creation as Scotty in transition and maybe attacking mismatches downhill, and the fact that Sky is just an all defensive level player this season. I think they're very definitely in the same tier, but dude, Atlanta's played absolutely nobody, and I think Toronto has done just enough for me to put them over them.
The reason I put these teams together is because they do have a lot of the same strengths. Like you brought up Toronto winning the transition battle, winning the turnover battle. That's also where Atlanta gets their biggest advantages. Actually, in the last 2 months, like you said, the schedule does have to be accounted for, but there also is something to be said about the ability to dominate every statistical category, even against lesser competition. Atlanta in the last 2 months has the second best net rating in the league with plus 11.5, only behind the Spurs. They are above average in every single category. They're a top 15 offensive true shooting. They're the number 1 turnover team on offense and the number 2 team forcing turnovers. So they just dominate the turnover battle. They've been a top 3 defensive rebounding team and a top 10 offensive rebounding team. They have won the possession. They are winning the net possession battle by plus 7.8 points over the last 2 months, which is 2 points better than any other team. It's like what we saw with Houston last year. But the difference is that Atlanta has elite 3-point shooters. They've got CJ McCollum and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who can both get up 9 to 10 threes a game at a 40% clip. They've got guys off the bench they can rely on. They've got size. They've got athleticism. They've got switchability on defense. Dyson Daniels has been awesome over this most recent stretch. Jalen Johnson is starting to get some of that defensive juice back now that he's getting some of the offensive load distributed more to Alexander Walker and CJ McCollum, and Daniels running some offense. Mohamed Gay is giving them some good bench minutes, of course, as their most versatile defensive piece. There's a lot to like with Atlanta, and I just don't know how much of it I can say is due to the schedule and how much of it is just legitimately them improving as a team. Because there's just a lot of green flags that pop up. Like, if you are dominating the transition battle and you're dominating turnovers and you're a really good 3-point shooting team and you're a really good half-court defense, it's like all of these things start to add up, and it's like, yeah, you're just a really good playoff team. But the big hang-up I have is I just do not trust their half-court offense in late-game situations. How do you feel about Atlanta's half-court offense in late-game situations? Or, like, even just against a great playoff defense?
What is it going to derive to? Is it going to be CJ, Onyeka, PNR, Jalen Johnson
usually
downhill?
Like heavy Jalen Johnson usage, and maybe you'll do like Jalen Johnson with a screen from Alexander Walker or with a screen from McCollum. Jalen Johnson, for the leaps he's taken offensively, still very transition reliant. Like in the half court, not the best ball handler, not going to put a ton of pressure on the rim despite being such a big, lengthy athlete because of the handling limitations. Has a little bit of a mid-range game, but not what I'd call a mid-range assassin by any means. not really a pull-up three-point threat. So when you run through Jalen Johnson, there is that variable of attacking mismatches when you get a screen from a guard, or he's a really good passer. Like if you put two on the ball, he's going to pick that apart. He can make a wide variety of passes. He can go over the top of the defense because of his height. But like if you are a team that can effectively switch those actions, CJ McCollum can't create an advantage from a standstill. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I don't trust to create advantages consistently from a standstill. Okongwu, not any advantage creation there. Dyson Daniels, same thing, not any advantage creation. And Dyson Daniels in the playoffs is going to be one of those guys who doesn't get guarded because he's shooting 14% from three on the season. So I do think there are serious half-court offensive limitations, but I also feel the same way about Toronto. I guess the advantage I'd give to Toronto is that Ingram is clearly a better on-ball creator than anyone Atlanta has in the half court, and maybe Quickly's a better pick-and-roll ball handler than Atlanta has in the half court. So I give them that advantage. But I also think Atlanta dominates the margins even more. Like I think they're a way better turnover team. I also think they're a better transition team. They're definitely better at rebounding. And Atlanta probably has a little bit more lineup versatility, I'd say, at this point. So I don't know, man. That's why I grouped these two teams together. To me, they got to be neck and neck. I personally give a slight edge to Atlanta, and I think the big difference for me is the three-point shooting. Toronto is a very bad three-point shooting team. They're just not a good three-point shooting team at all. And I think that will create a lot more grogginess in those late game half court situations. If teams start to hone in on, let's get back in transition, let's not turn the ball over, let's just make them play in the half court. That to me feels less trustworthy than some of what Atlanta does. And Toronto's another team that, for all of their defensive strengths, I don't view them as an elite defensive team unless they start to put out those offensively weak lineups. Like if you get Jamal Shedd out there, Jacoby Walter, Scotty Barnes, Colin Murray Boyles, like those are really good defensive lineups that now cannot score. But then if you get your best offensive players on the court, Quickly, RJ Barrett, Brandon Ingram, now Scotty is relied on to do so much defensive heavy lifting that they just bleed in all these other areas, and then you lose a lot of your transition advantage and things like that. So I think Atlanta has a more replicable style of play against better playoff teams, if that makes sense, because of the superior shooting, the superior size, and then also the way they just dominate the rebounding and turnover battle.
All right, so we both have in this tier so far, at least, Golden State, Phoenix, Toronto, Atlanta. I have LA in this tier. Did you put the Lakers in this tier too?
I'm gonna put the Lakers in this tier. I'm gonna rank them 12th. So I'll give you my ranking. So I had the Suns 16th. They were my last in this tier. Then it went Raptors 15, Hawks 14. Warriors were my number 13 team. And to compare the Warriors to the Hawks and Raptors real quick, to me, it's just that reliability of the offense in the half court with Steph Curry, and then also the fact that playoff Draymond, Porzingis has your rim protector. Like I just think they have a very easy to see pathway to creating an elite 2A lineup. But I wouldn't be mad if you had the Hawks or the Raptors or even the Suns over the Warriors. I'm gonna slot the Lakers in at 12, and then right above the Lakers, I'm gonna have the Clippers at 11, still in this tier. The Clippers are an interesting team because they are just kind of have the signal of this offensive juggernaut, right? Like against top 10 defenses, they're the number 2 half court offense and the number 1 transition offense. And that transition offense has been the result of just injecting life into this group with Darius Garland, Benedict Mathurin, running the floor, playing fast, getting Kawhi out in transition. And Kawhi, I believe, is generating like 1.4 points per possession in transition. So it's just this hyper efficient transition weapon. I think the Clippers are going to be an elite playoff offense. If you were going the angle again of what that run looks like and the fact that they're going to have to face the Spurs or the Thunder, yeah, you're kind of cooked. But just in terms of the quality of the team, they're going into the playoffs with a clearly elite offense that can beat you in so many different ways. So we talked earlier about the ability to have guys who can just consistently win their matchups. I think Benedict Mathurin actually fits that mold just because he has an extremely high free throw rate. Like last year, he actually led the entire playoffs in free throw rate. He's someone who's going to get to the line a ton and create a ton of downhill pressure. Maybe not the most efficient scorer, not the best shot maker, definitely not the best decision maker, but can consistently win his matchup if you're going to put the third or fourth best defender on him. John Collins can be used as a mismatch guy in the post. They'll attack switching with John Collins. Darius Garland in that spread pick and roll, especially with John Collins and some of these more athletic rim runners that the Clippers do have, really dangerous, and he can attack a mismatch and win one-on-one. But then also they have besides Shea, I mean, is Kawhi the second best isolation player on the planet right now? I mean, I guess healthy Luca is in that mix as well, but Kawhi as an isolation scorer is a mismatch for everyone because if you're quick enough to cut him off, he's too big and too strong for you. If you're strong enough to body bump him, he's too quick for you. He's too good of a shooter for you. He's making 40% of his threes like he always does. Kawhi, and then in late game situations, I don't know how many more guys you trust than Kawhi Leonard to bring you home offensively. So I do think there's just a clear
Jokic,
offense.
Shea, Luka.
Jokic, Shea, Luka. I mean, that's the list. Yeah, and then Kawhi probably. So yeah, that's the type of offensive talent we're talking about when you run through Kawhi. And they can go to 5-out lineups. They have the ability to field out 5-out lineups because they put Brook Lopez in the court, because John Collins can space. But I do think the problem with the Clippers stems from what we talk about with their front court. They got zapped with injuries. They traded Zubats. Then Niederhauser goes down with an injury, and he was their athletic rim protector, rim runner. So they're stuck and very rigid in the front court where it's like we kind of have to have Brook Lopez out there or we go small. And then like Brook Lopez is the weakest rebounder of any five in the league. So then we get killed on the glass. And then also Brook Lopez can't really be a playoff defender because he can't move. And I guess that's the issue with the Clippers because despite having Derek Jones Jr., Kawhi Leonard, Chris Dunn, all these guys, they're going to be a bad playoff defense because they not only have weak links in a Garland, in a Mathurin, they have guys, they have no front court depth or versatility. They have no lineup versatility. They have no schematic versatility, and they're slow. They're slow and they can't rebound. So I do think they're going to be a bad defensive team in the playoffs. That's why I can't have them a tier above despite being one of the better offenses going into the playoffs. But they have such a proven recipe to how they create. And I really think they can get their game off against any defense. So to me, they are just a slight step above what we talked about with some of these other teams, yet still not enough to truly make a serious playoff push.
Yeah, I think the biggest flaw with the Clippers is very clearly just their coverage versatility defensively in terms of, I mean, really the same problems that the Milwaukee Bucks teams have had in previous seasons defensively, where even if they have strong point of attack defense, like I think very clearly the Clippers have good enough on-ball perimeter defenders, whether it's Derek Jones Jr. is very clearly a good defender. Chris Dunn is obviously a really, really good and really strong point of attack defender, which is why I think during the regular season, in over 100 minutes played, you know, the three-man grouping of Chris Dunn, Darius Garland, and Kawhi Leonard all on the floor together, it has a net rating of plus 30, and they're just this offensive buzzsaw, and also getting the requisite stops needed to, you know, field out really, really good teams. And you take Chris Dunn off the floor, and it's just Kawhi and Garland with no Chris Dunn. They're a plus 14, so still a good defense. I mean, a good team in general, but their defense falls off a mountain. But I think we just see it, man. Like, this team's biggest weakness is very clearly just the fact that they don't have the coverage versatility needed to consistently beat the best offenses in the playoffs, the best playoff offenses. But then also, like, I don't know, man. I think this is a big playoff for Darius Garland to kind of prove like, hey, look, if a team decides, hey, we're just going to switch to be super physical with you at the point of contact and see if you can consistently win one-on-ones, where that wasn't maybe what you could do with Harden and Kawhi. Now, granted, Harden, you could do it a little bit in the sense it's a different way of doing it. Harden, it was, okay, cool, we're going to see if we can switch and maybe force you to be more of a driver. Well, okay, cool. You know, Harden is still going to just dice you up and be one of the best passers on the planet. And he just becomes way more jump shot reliant in those scenarios because the driving and the finishing just maybe isn't what it used to be. And if he isn't hitting jump shots on those given nights, then, okay, cool, you're going to get the really bad scoring outputs in a playoff series. Where if it does hit, you know, James Harden is an all-time level shot maker and shot creator, and you're getting 40 points on plus 10 relative true shooting. Where Darius Garland in some of his playoff outings just, I don't know if bully's a bit harsh, but it almost looks against teams that wants to switch and be ultra physical with them at the point of contact to say, we can just switch, be ultra physical and aggressive with you, and we're gonna not give you a whole bunch of advantages to create. And if that's the place that the Clippers potentially wind up at in a playoff series, now it's Kawhi go being a god level scorer, which I mean he can be, but how sustainable is it where you don't have your running mate with you offensively? And their offense is going to come down to those two a lot of nights, unless Benedict Mathurin is able to foul bait his way to the free throw line, which is not me hating on Benedict Mathurin. I do not want that to sound and be taken negative. There is
dude, it's funny how like foul bait has such a negative connotation, even though getting to the free throw line is so good. Like it is one of the best things you can do as an offensive player.
Trust me, I would like Benedict Mathurin on my team. So I do have the Clippers in this tier for the sole purpose of non-Kawhi playoff creation ability is just a question mark. I'm going to give Darius Garland slight benefit of the doubt, but is at least a question mark. And then the fact that they just have no coverage versatility defensively. And I think the only team like the deep drop, I could see it working at least in some capacity against San Antonio. I think it could work against Houston for sure.
Yeah.
Just about every other contender, I don't think it works. Which is every other team in a playoffs, like, okay, cool, you're gonna run drop on Phoenix, on Golden State, on the Lakers, on Shea.
Yeah, but like Minnesota, like you're cooked. Yeah, you can't run that deep drop against Minnesota or Denver or OKC. Yeah, you're fried.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great point. And I totally agree. I think in order to have some of the defensive weaknesses and lack of versatility that the Clippers do have, and then also just be such a bad rebounding team, you have to be a tier 1 offense. And while the Clippers are a very high level offense, I don't think they're a Denver, for example, or a Cleveland even. I think they're a step below that. So to me, if they were in that higher offensive tier, I'd be able to jump them up just a little bit. But to me, they're like right at the top of this tier with one other team. I feel like you have 2 other teams in this tier. How many other teams do you have in this year? I have 1. 2. So I think I know who they are. I'm going to go with my number 10. And I assume you have them in this tier as well. I have Charlotte here. Charlotte is a very weird team because they're clearly just a super high level offensive unit. And we've talked about this all season. I think Charlotte might be our most talked about team this season. The way they create advantages, the deliberate actions that they run, right, where it's guard to guard screen into some kind of pin down action, or guard to guard screen into a second pick and roll on the empty side, or Musa Diabate come up, it's going to be a fake pick and roll, we're going to give the ball to you and then reverse it and have you run off a back screen from Con Knipple. The screening, the amount of ball handlers and shooters they have on the court is one thing. They're a top 3 team in both 3-point attempts and 3-point percentage, so they just blitz teams from the 3-point line. And if they get hot, they can beat literally anybody. And I mean anybody. Like, if they get hot, they can beat OKC. They can beat San Antonio. Like, that's the offensive ceiling this team has. But I don't think they can create clean advantages against elite playoff defenses for a couple of reasons. I think, one, they rely on teams having the miscommunications and like the not knowing of what we should do against these screening actions. So, for example, when LaMelo comes off a ghost screen from Con Knipple, that forces defenses into a bind because it's like, well, we don't want to switch this guy onto LaMelo because then that's a blow-by problem, or he can set up the spread pick and roll with Diabate and cause problems that way. We don't want to put 2 on the ball because Knipple's a 43% three-point shooter who's also a dynamic short roll threat, so we don't want to do that. But these elite playoff defenses don't run into that issue because it's like, oh, we'll just switch. That's fine. Yeah, we'll switch Derek White onto LaMelo Ball and have Jaylen Brown guard Con Knipple. That's fine. Or whatever the case may be. Or Detroit even. They've struggled with Detroit this season because it's like, well, Cade can be our point of attack guy and we'll switch him, or Asar Thompson. Yeah, we'll have you switch this ghost screen. And when you have a more deliberate, intentional, switch-heavy scheme that doesn't give up mismatches, Charlotte doesn't have 1 or 2 guys that they can go to as reliable half-court isolationists, and I think that's what separates them from Indiana. Because you get a lot of the comps to the Pacers where it's for this fast-paced offense. We have all these shooters. We have a pass-first point guard who's running the show. He's quick to get off the ball. He gets everyone involved. And you see the similarities, but then there's 2 distinct differences between LaMelo and Halliburton. One is LaMelo turns the ball over like twice as much, and that just it bleeds value in comparison to Halliburton because Halliburton's such a dominant turnover player. The other aspect of it is Halliburton's a much better change of pace blow-by guy, and he's a way better finisher inside. Like I'm pretty sure in last year's playoffs, Halliburton shot 75 to 80% at the rim or something like that, and it was only like 3 attempts a game, but that's a heavy like 75 to 80% of the rim, and he also shot, I believe, 50% from mid-range, which was heavy diet of floaters. LaMelo this season is 57% at the rim and 41% from mid range, which again is heavy diet of floaters. He doesn't get to the free throw line. So if you get him up against an elite defensive matchup, he's not as much of an isolation blow by threat as Halliburton. And then also they don't have a Pascal Siakam, where Pascal Siakam in the last two playoff runs has been one of the most efficient isolation players on the planet, and just their ultimate guy they would go to attack switching. So like he wins Eastern Conference Finals MVP because he just blitzes New York in that series. They tried putting hard on him. They tried switching with McHale. It didn't matter. Siakam just bullied them in that mid post, and of course the transition runouts and stuff. Charlotte, they have. I just don't think their offensive system is replicable against the best of the best defensive teams unless they get scorching hot from three. And obviously that can happen. So their ceiling is so high. That's why I have them above anyone else in this tier, because I do think their offensive ceiling is that high. But then also what we kind of talked about with the Clippers and some of these other teams, I don't think Charlotte's a tier one offense because of some of those limitations. And then also they have defensive weaknesses where they're going to be fielding out lineups with 3 or 4 guys that offenses are going to want in the primary action that they consistently can beat off the dribble. And they are very connected on defense. Their communication's great. Their rotations are great. They do a lot of pre-switching and high-level concepts. Moussa Diabate is an awesome anchor. But in a playoff series, it's like, let's slow down. Let's find this matchup we want. Let's get Nipple on Cade Cunningham. Actually, very recently, the Celtics' late-game offense was Jaylen Brown, go get Nipple or LaMelo or whoever, and just fry them one-on-one. And they just blitzed Charlotte in the fourth quarter. And I think that's what we're going to see against pretty much any high-level playoff team. That's why the Hornets have, I believe, the worst clutch net rating of any playoff team. They're negative 11 net rating in the clutch, which is dead last among any playoff team. And I think that stems from offensive and defensive limitations in their personnel. I said it on Twitter, though. If you can replace the Miles Bridges role with a legit elite isolationist who can defend, and that's not easy to find, but the example I keep going to is Siakam. They are this core is close to contention. I think they're a lot closer than people realize. But in terms of being competitive with the best playoff teams right now, I can't have them a tier above just because of some of those limitations on both sides of the ball, while acknowledging that they've had a hell of a season.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I really want to chime in and add on, because I think you made all the right points, is that if you look at their 3 primary options in the half court, in LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and Nipple, they're all right around 2.4 rim attempts per game. And Brandon Miller and Connor are good finishers at the rim. They're both above 65% at the rim. Although LaMelo, like you said, 57% at the rim this season. None of them get to the free throw line. They're all below 4 attempts per game, and actually Brandon Miller's the only one that attempts over 3 free throws per game. So just the simple fact that you don't have any easy or just easy and reliable 2-point scoring that you can consistently go to. Okay, cool. Like you said, Indiana had the Pascal mid-post isolations. They had Nembhard and Halliburton ball screens, or if you want to switch, Halliburton isolation game, and the fact that you're going to get a good shot, and the fact that Halliburton can legitimately win one-on-one and in an underrated fashion and create easy shots. If we're doing this, I'm going to fully commit to the bit here. I'm just curious now. Tyrese Halliburton in the playoffs shot 77% at the rim or 76% at the rim on those 3 possessions. So, okay, cool. We're talking the same level. We're just going to call it the same level of volume at the rim, but just 20% better almost. So on a per possession basis, that's just absurd. But then also you have Benedict Mathurin, who's just a foul drawing machine. And I don't think the per game metrics do him justice. On a per 100 possession basis, Benedict Mathurin took 13 free throw attempts per 100 possessions, which is nuts. Pascal Siakam took 8 free throw attempts per 100 possessions. The fact that they could legitimately, okay, cool, well, let's create a downhill driving action to get Benedict Mathurin to the rim. Or also the fact that, did you know TJ McConnell on a per 100 possession basis took the most rim field goal attempts out of any of the guys on the team? This is in the playoffs too. This is not in the regular season where in theory the half court defense is going to be more favorable for an opposing offense. So I think that's just the biggest flaw, I think. And Charlotte is awesome. The concepts they do are just absurd and really creative, and match the personnel perfectly. But they are like too from an offensive and like making them like playoff proof, if you will. They're like two consistent 2 point scores away in a playoff setting from being like a legitimate championship level offense. And also the turnover stuff too, which you kind of already hammered home.
Yeah, and they do have one superpower that I do want to acknowledge that Indiana didn't have, and that's the fact that they're elite on the offensive glass, which is just the Moussa Diabate effect. That every lineup with him is just the best offensive rebounding lineup in basketball, like the Steven Adams type of effect we see on those lineups. But I do think there's this aspect of, yes, Charlotte can have offensive limitations and get away with it against good defenses because they're going to get on the offensive glass and make up those second chances. But there are teams out there with great rebounders that just completely neutralize that advantage. And then Charlotte is so reliant on the three ball. It's like if the three ball is falling, we can get hot. If the three ball is not falling, we can fall apart. And actually, they just faced Detroit a couple days ago, and they couldn't score in the fourth quarter. Like they went into the fourth quarter. It was a very close game, and then the Hornets were hanging around like 89 to 95 points for like the first 6 minutes of the fourth quarter. And it was those shots went cold, and then also Detroit pushed this button of, hey, we have Jalen Duren, so there goes your offensive rebounding because we're just going to destroy the glass now. And I do think, yeah, if you can neutralize them on the offensive glass and then switch effectively, you basically solve their offense. And like you said, if they had more mismatch attacking, more foul drawing, that would be something they can push. And then also, but also if they were just an elite defensive team, it wouldn't even matter, but they're not. So it's like they're a tier 2 offense who has defensive limitations. And I don't think that's enough to seriously compete outside of a fluke type of run. But I do think their ceiling is higher than any of the other teams, unless besides like healthy LA, but I'm not really counting that as a ceiling. It's kind of weird. So finishing out this tier for me was the Hornets at 10. I'm going to assume you have the Rockets at 9 still in this tier.
Sell me on Houston.
I have Houston a tier above. They're also my number 9 team. I just think they're in the tier with the other teams. To me, I think it has been the way they've survived this midseason identity shift and actually peaked going into the playoffs. So they've been playing their best basketball of the season. Şengün had that weird injury stretch, and he's kind of getting back to his higher level of play. Amen Thompson looks incredible. He just had a 41-point game a couple days ago. He's at his best. Kevin Durant looks incredible, like just absolutely incredible as a shot maker. And my selling point for Houston would be, this is a team who all season long we've talked about, they just dominate the margins. They dominate the possessions. Even like going back before the Fred VanVleet injury, was they're going to take care of the ball. They can't do that anymore because Fred VanVleet gets hurt and they don't have a point guard. And then Steven Adams goes down, so there goes your offensive rebounding. And so what did they do? They were like, hey, let's just put the best possible defensive lineups on the court and ask Kevin Durant to get it out of the mud on offense. And that's essentially what they've done. And it's crazy, though, because I think there are serious half-court offensive limitations. And we saw that in that Lakers game that we referenced before, where once you start to trap Kevin Durant and you get the ball out of his hands, a lot of these guys are just very like they can't shoot the ball. They can't shoot the ball. They can't make decisions. And they are just going to struggle to create anything. But I do think the aspect of just if they can find enough ways to get the ball to Kevin Durant at the elbow or anywhere inside the arc, it will be good enough offense to have an above average true shooting signal. That can be enough offensive heavy, like floor raising and heavy lifting, to then lean into their size, athleticism, and defensive versatility. And they're going into the playoffs. I think I'd say they're the third best defensive team in the playoffs. Actually, fourth. I don't know what to do with San Antonio. They have the Wemby variable, so I'll probably just throw them ahead of Houston. But there's this tier 1 of defensive teams where it's, I think OKC and Detroit are very clearly the 2 best defensive teams going into the playoffs. Then it's San Antonio and Houston, in my opinion. I think Houston's in that mix. They've got so many point of attack options, rim protectors at literally every single position. They've got defensive playmakers who are going to force turnovers, get runouts, get you going in transition. And I guess my selling point for Houston would be, again, all of this stuff on defense, right? Like they're going to stifle any type of offense, whether it's a spread pick and roll offense, whether it's an ISO heavy offense. They have the units to just stifle any offense and then turn them over. They're going to get a lot of these transition runouts. They're going to close possessions on the defensive glass. They're a good defensive rebounding team. And then on offense, they just have to find enough ways to get the ball to Kevin Durant where he wants it and just let him shoot 30 times. Like we might see a 35 point per game playoff series from Kevin Durant just because they've got him shooting so many shots. And then it's like, if you just play off of that, if he gets hot, if you just play off of that, I do think they have enough working for them on the margins to be like, yeah, they're a clearly better team than any of the other teams we've talked about up to this point, outside of a healthy Lakers squad. I don't know if I sold you. I do acknowledge they still have serious half-court offensive limitations that'll prevent them from serious championship contention. But there's always that variable of how many teams can actually exploit their issues and while keeping them off the glass, while fielding a competent enough offense to beat their athleticism and switchability. I guess that's my point. Like, they don't need to construct elite two-way lineups because they force the other team to adjust to them, if that makes sense. So, like, the other team has to figure out a way to rebound. They have to figure out a way to break Houston's shell and score on them at the rim. But then also in doing that, they might start taking away their own athleticism on defense or their own pressure at the point of attack. And then it's easier to get the ball to Kevin Durant. And you don't turn it over as much if you're Houston. I think against the top of the top, Houston just gets absolutely whooped. Like I'm not even, I'll spoil it for you. I think OKC is going to sweep them in the second round. Like that's, if Houston gets past LA, I think OKC sweeps them. They just can't beat the top teams because of some of these limitations. Like OKC can completely stifle their offense while continuing to score on them. But against these other teams in this middle group, like I don't think they'd have too much trouble scoring on Charlotte or the Clippers. I think they just dominate the Clippers on the glass. I don't think they'd have too much trouble scoring on the Lakers. I think they'd figure out a lot of that variable by game 5, 6, 7. They wouldn't be able to score on the Warriors, but then also it's like, how are the Warriors going to score on the Rockets without Steph just having outlier shot making every single game of that series? I think they could get their game off against the Hawks even. I think they could get their game off against the Suns. And I think that's just, maybe that's why I have them at 9 and not ahead of any of the other teams we're going to talk about. But I do think they're a tier better than the teams below them just because they have a defensive superpower and then one of the most reliable shot makers in NBA history.
I do have a question for you, and depending on how you answer this will also depend on how like I follow up. Would you agree then that the style of play that we're gonna do all this other stuff, we're gonna win on the margins, and just please just get the ball to Kevin Durant, that in the playoff setting that they're gonna be in a lot of close games? Would you agree? Just yes or no?
I don't know. My hunch says yes. But then also we did that with Minnesota last year, and then they just created so much margin against the Lakers, where we thought it was going to be close games.
It was the last year Lakers, bro, with Jackson Hayes and Maxi Kleber.
But that's what I'm saying. Like I think Houston does things like with their turnover creation on defense and their athleticism and transition. Like they have ways to just create scoreboard margins, where it's like maybe instead of a close game, it's like they go into the clutch with a 5-point advantage. Like. I don't see them being in a lot of situations where they're close and down. It's like either they get like blown out and they're down by 10 in the fourth quarter, or they're going into these clutch minutes like up 4, up 5. That's kind of how I feel about it. And then it's like they really have to lose the game. Like they have to really throw it away.
Okay.
And they could. That's why.
Yeah, they're gonna force turnovers, but like not nearly as much as they also turn the ball over. They have a negative turnover margin because of just how much they turn the ball over. Which is why, like, I get you with the like, let's get the ball to Kevin Durant. But, like, dude, like, can they actually get the ball to Kevin Durant? Like, I think that's way more of a hypothetical than we're giving it credit for. Also, they're just an awful clutch offense.
You're right. No, there is definitely a possibility that they just struggle to get the ball to Kevin Durant. That's kind of why I think it's opponent dependent. But, like, I think that's why they can't beat any of the top teams. But I think these other teams that we're going to talk about, I don't know if they can field lineups that turn Houston over. Like Minnesota, for example, we're going to talk about soon. They don't really force turnovers at all. So it's like, do I think they're going to turn Houston over consistently? I don't know who wins that battle. And then it's like, yeah, they have good defenders for Kevin Durant, but then also Houston has amazing defenders for Anthony Edwards and for the way Minnesota likes to operate. Julius Randle's not going to have those mismatches. Even look at New York. Like, I don't think New York is going to be able to, like, and that's not even a matchup that's going to happen, but I'm just comparing them because they're in this tier for me. I don't think they would really be able to turn Houston over a lot. And then Houston neutralizes a lot of what makes New York great. New York dominates the glass. Houston's an even better rebounding team. The Cavaliers, I think with their small guards and stuff, they wouldn't be able to really avoid giving up mismatches, and Kevin Durant is going to be able to easily get entry passes from that. I just think a lot of the teams we're going to talk about in this tier coming up are just flawed enough that I think Houston in a series against them would still pose a lot of interesting challenges. So where it's like maybe those teams I think are better against the top end teams, but I also think Houston does enough on the margins and especially defensively to where it's like I feel like we can group them in and feel good about it while also acknowledging that I do think they are clearly the worst team in this group. Where I don't think it's a tier jump from them and then like the Cavs, the Timberwolves, the Knicks, but I do think they are like noticeably worse than them to where I slot them in at 9 pretty much automatically.
Okay. I'll keep my list how it is for now. I'm assuming we have this. Do you have 4 teams this tier?
I have 5 because of the Rockets.
Well, okay.
And then 4 more after them.
Okay, so I'm assuming we have the same remaining 4.
I would hope so. I would hope so.
I would hope so. I mean, if you want a spoiler, 3 East, 1 West. You take that information how you will. I mean, who knows? Who knows? It might be the Spurs in this tier as that 1 West team.
There you go.
I might just hate Wemby. Who knows? No, all seriousness. How did you? I guess we can start with and just tackle the East teams. How did you like sort through these East teams?
I struggled with this because they're all so different. Like I think Cleveland is this juggernaut of an offense. Like they're going to be really hard to guard. I think Detroit is this juggernaut of a defense. They're going to be really hard to score on. I think New York has been statistically a great defense, but we know of their limitations in the way you can attack Cat and Brunson in primary actions. But also I'm like, how many teams can actually do that? Again, like that's what's tough because we see these limitations. Like we see New York's limitations get pronounced against an Indiana, but there isn't another Indiana. Like I don't know how many teams can actually do what Indiana did against the Knicks and how much that actually matters. And then New York has this button they can push where it's we start playing Brunson ball or we start going 5 out, these heavy 5 out lineups with 4 guys who can all make 40% of their threes. And then it's like we can field out these insane half court offensive lineups while dominating the glass, or we can get Mitchell Robinson on the court and go ultra big and we can switch everything. Like, I don't know, man. I think the way I kind of thought about it was what it'll look like against the best teams in the league, because these teams are where we're starting to get to the tier where it's like outlier title push, I think is what you called it. And it's like, how would you look against the best teams in the league? And I think I defaulted to, okay, Detroit has the most easily replicable style of play against the best teams in the league. Like they're in NBA history. They are always going to be like, I don't know if there's any team in history that you can match up against them and they're not going to be bigger, more athletic and more physical than them. Like they are just so big, so athletic and so physical. And that matters in the playoffs. Like the whistle gets tighter. You start to look for those slight possession wins, like forcing turnovers. And I talked about it earlier. Detroit is the number 2 team in forcing turnovers. They're also an elite rebounding team on both sides of the ball, especially against top 10 teams. They just dominate the offensive glass and then they close possessions on defense. They can do everything defensively. Asar Thompson's going to make the all defensive first team. He should be a defensive player of the year finalist, I think. He's probably the best point of attack defender on the planet right now. But then it's off the bench, Ron Holland, Beef Stew. You've got Jalen Duren, who's your kind of versatile big anchor. Cade Cunningham can be used as your point of attack and also your switch guy. And that's so important because we talk about how Boston's defensive flexibility gets unlocked by having Jason Tatum on the court. And it's the fact that he can start at the point of attack and switch out, or he can start on the center and switch onto the ball and neutralize lob threats. I think Detroit's going to do the exact same thing. Like Cade Cunningham being a big physical guard while also being your offensive cornerstone, so you never have to worry about two-way lineup construction. It's like you just unlock so much. I was specifically thinking about the exercise of a Detroit versus Cleveland second-round matchup that we were probably going to get. And the way I was thinking about it was, okay, Cleveland's offense is very Mitchell Harden spread pick and roll dominant, right? But what happens when you put Cade on Harden and then you put Asar on Donovan Mitchell and it's Asar, we want you fighting over every screen from Donovan Mitchell and we're going to have Duren drop back. But Cade, we want you to switch everything. and switch off of Harden, and we're going to put Duren on Harden in those switch situations. And now Cade, you take away the lob from Mobley or Allen, because I don't think Mobley or Allen against Cade is a mismatch. I don't think they're going to post that up and try to look to exploit that one-on-one. Or you can even switch with Mitchell against Mitchell, right? Like Asar is perfectly fine as your low man. He can be a rim protector very easily. And then it's like, okay, the Cavs on offense, they could easily say, we think Mitchell or Harden can win this Duren matchup and create blow-bys. But if you have Mobley and Allen on the court at the same time, Detroit can just pack the paint. We can put Tobias Harris on the block. We can put Asar in the paint. We can put Cade in the paint. All of these guys, like Cade's probably the best rim protecting guard in the league, not named Derek White. Asar's up there. You have Jalen Duren can pack the paint. Beef Stew can come in and they can go double big and pack the paint. So it's like, no matter what, the blow-bys aren't even an issue. Then Cleveland can go, hey, we are going to take one of our bigs off the court, Mobley or Allen, right? And we're going to go, Cleveland superpowers, they can put out lineups with 40% three-point shooters. So let's say it's Mitchell, Harden, Sam Merrill, Jalen Tyson, Evan Mobley. Now Detroit's defense is really stressed. But what happens on the other side of the court? Now Mobley's the only guy on the court who can grab a rebound or protect the rim. So we are going to just pound the paint with Asar Thompson crashing from the baseline. Jalen Duren, I'm so high on Jalen Duren. Like he's so good. He's so freaking good. But like Detroit is just, if Cleveland goes single big, then Detroit just absolutely murders them on the glass on offense and then just murders them with points in the paint. I think they're actually the number one team in points in the paint margin on the season on between offense and defense. They also have that transition variable. They're an elite transition defense, and they have the athletes to get out and run. And I think where I lean Detroit over either Cleveland or New York is I look at New York's offense and defense, and I'm like, okay, they are forced to adjust to what the other team does to them, right? Like if they're putting Cat and Brunson in every action, they have to adjust. Like they have to get Deuce McBride on the court. They have to get Mitchell Robinson on the court. I look at Cleveland and it's like against switching or against their double big units getting like neutralized with spacing. They then have to adjust. Detroit, to me, I view as the team that forces the adjustments. They are going to play their style of basketball. They're going to have these jumbo lineups. They're going to have these athletic lineups. They're going to kill you on defense. And Cade Cunningham's going to do enough on offense to kind of lift the floor. Duncan Robinson's been an awesome addition. They can go to the two-man game stuff with him and Duren. They can diversify the attack. Dennis Jenkins as a second ball handler and then also running the bench unit with Duren in the two-man game. Like they'll be fine even with Cade on the bench. I think they are the team that forces the adjustments. So in this type of exercise where I think about a team that actually has a shot to win the title, that to me is where I give the nod to Detroit over either New York or Cleveland. Like they are going to be the ones that force you, even the best teams in the league are going to have to adjust to the way Detroit plays.
So to just spoil how I ranked the three, I went Detroit, New York, Cleveland as how I ranked the three. I think what sold me completely on Detroit was just how it was basically business as usual. This is not a knock on Cade. It was practically business as usual without Cade. Like, there's like, okay, cool. We're still this like elite all-time level defense, basically. Dennis Jenkins is going to have an uptick in volume and our offense is going to be good enough to just, still churn out wins and things like that. The lineup, the defensive versatility with again, like you said, with Cade and how good he is, and the fact that he's able to be a backline low man rim protector or secondary rim protector, how he can guard at the point of attack for playoff series. I think they are going, like you said, to force teams to adjust before the series even begins, which is already such a huge advantage. Like, San Antonio obviously has the greatest advantage, which is Wemby, and how you're going to have to adjust. Okay, cool. Like, how are we going to keep Wemby out off the baseline? Like, is it a section of the playbook that we're going to have to nuke? Or are we going to have to, change our lineup or whatever the case may be? Detroit is also not on that level, but Detroit, like, has a similar level where, okay, cool. We know they're going to crash super, super hard. We know that they're going to be a dominant defense, and Cade's going to uplift them in the half court offensively until they go to the bench with Dennis Jenkins. We know that they have Tobias as a mismatch threat, so they could feed him the ball in the post. They could go two-man action with Duncan and with Duren, or with three-man action it's Cade, Duncan, Duren. I think with Detroit, they have enough offense very clearly, I think, especially this year. And Cade's just leveled up as an on-ball creator, too, which is even more levels of confidence, I think, for Detroit. They have more than enough offense, and their defense is really freaking good to the point where, like, dude, if the role players are able to hit enough shots from the perimeter, and like, yeah, Detroit to spoil is at the top of this tier for me because out of this group of teams, I think they have you like to say the most replicable a lot. So I'm gonna steal it from you and say I think they have their output of how they like to win games is I think the most likely to go into a playoff series and okay, cool. Like Cade is our offensive engine, our defensive versatility. Okay, cool. We're gonna beat Boston, and okay, cool. We're gonna beat San Antonio or beat OKC, in a maybe or beat Denver in a maybe less than likely. Not saying they'd be the betting favorites, if you will, but the way they play is the more likely outcome to get that thing done. New York, I like that they're playing really good basketball recently. I think the vibes are high if you wanted to do a vibe check for Knicks fans because of how they played recently. And the fact that, dude, they could just spread you out offensively with Brunson and Cat. I think in that Boston game, it was encouraging to see them kind of, press some of the right buttons offensively with Brunson and Cat, and even you have an outlier Josh Hart game, but I like that they were even kind of able to figure some stuff out. There's obviously that play that is kind of going around a lot where New York and Brunson on this specific play did a great job countering how Boston wanted to pre-switch some actions and keep Queta on Josh Hart, and it ultimately ended up with Queta on Cat. And because of the advantage that New York were able to create without really even having to move, it was just a regular ball screen. Eventually, they were able to get Josh Hart open layup, and I think finding the creative wrinkles within the offense. Especially now going into the playoffs, because that's what every team is going to try to do. They're just going to try to sit their big on Josh Hart and see if he's able to hit shots or see if he's able to, make plays and impact the game offensively. And them finding those little other wrinkles and buttons offensively just makes them so much harder to guard because they can obviously field lineups with Brunson, McHale, OG, Deuce McBride, and Cat, and it's like, all right, bro, we're gonna have 40% 3-point shooting across the board, literally. I think the Knicks' biggest issue is very clearly just the fact that if there is a team that can actually put them in a bind defensively, similar to what Indiana was able to do last season, I think there is proven data that says that that's just not going to work in the playoffs. But again, to your point, is there a team that can do that consistently? Maybe Denver?
Well, I was going to say, this is where I ran into the issue because I do think Cleveland is the team that can do it. And so it's like, I don't know what to make of that because like Knicks and Cleveland, I think are so neck and neck. I keep flipping them back and forth. I did think Detroit was a little bit of a leg up on these two teams because of everything we've talked about. But Cleveland, I look at as the team that could just span double drag like Indiana did, and it's like James Harden get Cat on an island, or Donovan Mitchell force Cat to put two on the ball with Brunson, and then it's like, how do you rotate behind the play? How does McHale as the low man alter Mobley or Allen to a short roll?
We could just make that a shootout. If I'm New York, then.
But do you think New York wins a shootout against? Like, I think Cleveland has the best collection of shooters in the league. Like, if you get into a shootout with Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, Sam Merrill, Jalen Tyson, Max Strus, like, are you winning that battle, really?
I'm not gonna lie. I might just. I'm. If it gets to a point where, like last year, and we just simply can't guard it, I'm testing my luck, bro. I'm testing my luck and kind of can see, like, dude, we're probably not gonna guard you well here, so we're gonna actually maybe concede the switch and live with Harden isolation and just pray that Brunson, Cat, McHale, OG, and Deuce, or hell, fill in and make that Mitchell Robinson if you want to match their bigs, because then also you keep the offensive rebounding advantage, and we're just gonna race you to 120. And I'm gonna trust our guys.
One of the big advantages that New York does have over Cleveland in this specific scenario is they have the ability to go big and spacey. Like, OG is a huge forward. Cat is a big spacer. Cleveland, in any lineup where they have to go like space heavy, they lose all of their size. And Dean Wade, I don't even know if is a very playable offensive player in the playoffs. Like, he's just so limited to 35% 3-point shots. I also think, and this may be a hot take, I don't know how Cavs fans, but maybe we'll get a temperature check on this. Keon Ellis is a gimmick playoff player to me. I don't really think he's going to be a playoff, like, valuable playoff rotation player. I think the turnover generation can be great at times, and that can lead to easy point swings. But I also think he has a tendency to gamble a lot, and he's also very physically weak. So I look at like a Brunson, for example, and I think Keon Ellis is a mismatch. I look at like Boston with their big wings. I think Keon Ellis is a mismatch. I look at Cade. I think Keon Ellis is a mismatch. So if you're getting him on the floor for defense, I don't even know if you gain really advantages outside of the turnover creation. That again can be very reliant on gambling and getting out of position. But back to the point, I think Cleveland has no big forwards. That's been their biggest problem for years. They don't have anyone besides Dean Wade, who's a big forward that can space the floor. And so they rely on these double big lineups, or they rely on just like trying to outgun teams and sacrificing all of their rebounding and rim protection and size. And I do think New York would be the team that's like, hey, we can match your double bigs with two bigs of our own and Cat and Mitchell Robinson. And Cat and Mitchell Robinson easily win the rebounding battle versus Mobley and Allen. They also are better spacer, like they're more spaced because of Cat in those specific lineups. And then also OG's a bigger forward than anyone Cleveland has. McHale's a bigger wing than anyone Cleveland has. So they can go bigger and more offensively talented in certain lineups. But I think specifically about the matchup between the two, and it's like I think Cleveland is the one team in the East that can really punish New York's defensive limitations. So comparing the two gets really messy for me. I really can't decide.
Maybe it's like maybe it's just the coach in me and like just saying I'm just gonna trust my guys. Like I think you made my point for me there towards the end. Like, okay, cool. I'm just going Cat, Mitchell Robinson, Brunson, McHale, OG, and saying dog. Okay, if you want to put Brunson in every act, I'm just switching it. I'm actually going to switch it. Mitchell Robinson, you clean the glass, and we're going to dominate you on the offensive glass because of OG, Cat, and Mitchell Robinson. Brunson by himself is enough, and you have nobody that can guard Brunson one-on-one in isolation. McHale, OG hit shots. Like, I don't see how you guard us. And then if we do enough with OG and McHale, we can pre-switch some stuff even and like try to hide Brunson because we have Mitchell Robinson behind the play and Cat as a rebounding presence. Like, I think the lack of New York's size on the wing, specifically in that matchup, if we are going to compare them, I think New York, while Cleveland hypothetically does have the ability to, press all the right buttons for against the Knicks defense, I think the Knicks are actually just more flexible and versatile to match up with Cleveland.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, okay, my biggest hang up with the Knicks, and what do you make of this? And we've talked about this. In the last two seasons, negative net rating with their starting five. And I don't know if they've shown that willingness to be like, all right, Josh Hart, we're just not going to run you with these guys. Like, I just feel like he's always in those lineups no matter what. Even with Thibodeau, like they would make some changes and then it would always come back to Josh Hart closing games. And I don't know what do you make of that? Like, what do you make of the fact, like, I think Cleveland has lineups they can go to where it's Harden, Mitchell, probably Strus is going to be their starting three. Harden, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, and Allen, or Sam Merrill in place of Strus. And it's like, this is clearly a really good lineup. And maybe that lineup won't be as playable in the playoffs because of some of the yin and yang stuff we've talked about. But like the Knicks, it is proven that their starting five just is not a good lineup, and it's not a contender level lineup. And it's like, what do you make of that?
Don't play it. Figure out the lineup that makes sense.
Well, but will they? Ball. See, that's the problem. Like, we're not coaching these teams, Like, is Mike Brown going to say, yeah, we're just not going to run this lineup? If so, I think the Knicks are probably better than the Cavs. Like, if they just lean into the Brunson McBride, because Brunson and McBride together on the court are like plus 11 net rating this season. Like, those are really good lineups. If that's the game plan, I'm with you on the Knicks, but I think they're going to put themselves in holes just like last season where they start the series like putting themselves in a hole by running Josh Hart 40 minutes a game. And I think Josh Hart has valuable skills, like the connectivity on offense, the ability to push pace, his rebounding. Like, this stuff does matter. But in certain playoff matchups, like the Cavs, for example, are just going to put Evan Mobley on Josh Hart. And Evan Mobley is going to stifle everything they try to do offensively as that free safety. And then if you put Josh Hart in the primary action and use him as your dribble handoff guy, like they like to do to counter switching, or counter roaming, Mobley's just going to switch out on the ball. And he can defend 1 through 5, and that's perfectly fine. And Josh Hart has these limitations against, I think maybe that's where my hang up is. Maybe it's not specifically the Cavs and Knicks matchup. It's how the Knicks would look against the actual contender level teams. Like, what the heck are you going to do against Wemby if that's a finals matchup? Or what the heck are you going to do to create advantages against OKC? Or how the heck are you going to guard Jokic and keep your spacing on offense? Like, and then I also think Boston's just a really bad matchup for really any team in the East, but we'll talk about that. I don't know, man. I don't know what to make of New York or Cleveland. I think both of them are weird teams. I think that's why I have them. They're my 7-8. Were they your 7-8 as well?
I had Minnesota in between them.
Okay, so Minnesota I had in between the Cavs Knicks group and then the Pistons. I'm gonna go with the Cavs over the Knicks for now. I'm gonna go with my gut just because I trust the multifaceted offensive firepower punch, and I also think they cause more problems for the top teams with the way you have to scheme for them on both sides of the ball. But I don't feel great about it. I do think Cavs and Knicks is very 50-50. Like, those two teams to me are really neck and neck, and I wouldn't be surprised if either of them make a conference finals push. Like, that's very much in play for both of those teams. I had Minnesota 6th. It sounds like you had them 7th. Why? Okay. Yeah, that's how you know we're 2 hours in. Why'd you have New York over Minnesota?
I just really went with the reliability of Brunson ball, honestly. I didn't really overthink it. I think Minnesota and New York are on, honestly, very, very similar like caliber of teams, which is why I have them back to back, where I think they pose enough problems because I think are they like the opposites of, like, they're like the Timberwolves are Knicks West, low key, because I think they both have these elite creators in Brunson and Ant. They both have good enough secondary options with Randall and with Cat, but they also both have weird lineup inconsistency. Like, okay, Minnesota is not nearly at the level of New York, but I do think that we fairly consistently see these lineups and see these indicators where, okay, Minnesota, to get the most out of their offense, Randall and Gobert isn't the most. And Jaden McDaniels too, because of the spacing. And McDaniels has improved and been more consistent this season, but still, I think we're more than willing to live with McDaniels becoming a volume 3-point shooter with Randall and with Gobert on the floor. But okay, so now you have to get Gobert off the floor and in place for Naz Reid. Your offense takes a huge leap, but your defense falls off an absolute cliff with no Rudy Gobert on the floor. So in some similar ways, like, they have a issue like the Knicks in the standpoint of, look, can we consistently play our best guys together in order to field two-way lineups? And the answer is, for opposite reasons, no, because your offense takes a hit with Gobert, Randall on the floor together. And if you take Randall off the floor, you lose that mismatch hunting, advantage creation ability that you don't have with Ant. And your defense stays great, but now your offense struggles maybe even more because of how big they can rely on Randall as a legitimate mismatch hunter. So I didn't really I just went with the reliability of Brunson ball. I think these two teams are actually eerily similar, and maybe I'm like overthinking it and like trying to make it something that it isn't, but these two teams are very, very similar in my opinion.
Yeah, it's weird because, like, Minnesota technically figured something out in the non-Gobert minutes by having Kyle Anderson out there. Like, those have been really good defensive units. A 112 defensive rating in 200 minutes with Kyle on the court and Gobert off the court. Also a 112 offensive rating in those minutes. So just a neutral net rating. And it's like, okay, yeah, we figured out the problem without Gobert out there, but then the offense kind of tanks. And that's a small sample. I don't want to over-index on that. But also, there is some question about the viability of a Kyle Anderson lineup in the playoffs because of the offensive limitations, because you lose the spacing without this outlier defensive presence in Rudy Gobert. And you touched on it perfectly. I think Minnesota's limitation is that they have serious two-way lineup versatility, but none of the lineups are great on both sides of the ball. Like, they have elite offensive lineups and then they have elite defensive lineups. None of them cross that bridge. And to me, that's like the only thing holding them back from the top four teams. I think the top four teams, and we're going to talk about them, I think 3 of them have the ability to construct elite two-way lineups. One of them has the ability to construct, like, the best offense of all time in Denver. So I think Minnesota doesn't have that on either side of the ball. They can't construct a defense that's up to par with OKC or Detroit. They can't construct an offense that's up to par with Denver or Cleveland, in my opinion. And it's just this bind that they get put in by other teams where it's, do we go defense? Do we go offense? What can we actually do? We don't even have a point guard that we trust all the time yet. Bones Highland's been good. I would assume has been good, but neither of those guys are going to be up to the level of a championship caliber point guard, in my opinion. that you can rely on to really handle the ball and initiate a lot of offense. Anthony Edwards still has some decision-making warts, some scoring limitations that prevent him from being a Shea level creator that just solves all of these concerns that you get with going to a defensive slant. There's also the variable of Anthony Edwards has runner's knee and he's back playing, but like Anthony Edwards hasn't been Anthony Edwards. I still trust him to just flip that switch in the playoffs, but he might be a little bit athletically limited going into this Denver series, and Minnesota might not even have the offensive ceiling that we've gotten used to in years past. But I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And the reason I go with them over Cleveland or New York is I just think Minnesota is at worst the same team they've been in the last 2 years. At best, maybe a little bit better, a little bit deeper, and a little bit better version of Anthony Edwards running the show, a little bit better version of Jaden McDaniels by his side as well. And it's like there's just this proven playoff recipe of we're big, athletic, strong. We have really good 3-point shooters we can go to. Anthony Edwards is super hard to scheme for 99.9% of the teams. And we just are going to get to the conference finals doing our thing. That's kind of the argument for Minnesota for me over Cleveland or New York, because I do think they have a proven playoff recipe, but because of the lack of ability to construct elite two-way lineups, or really great offensive or really great defensive lineups, to me, there's no argument you can make to get them into that top tier. So they're just like stuck in this neutral zone where it's, I don't even know where you go from here, but you got to do something to get that next level.
I led off of Minnesota actually, so I'm going to just get the conversation going on the top tier then, and I'm just gonna jump the gun, and I'm gonna reveal my top four, in order, and we can start the conversation from there. For me, I went 1 OKC, 2 Boston, 3 Denver, 4 San Antonio. Thoughts?
I went 1 OKC, 2 San Antonio, 3 Denver, 4 Boston, and I feel terrible about it. So I want you to first sell me on Boston, because you had them 2, I had them 4, and I want to hear your thoughts on why you think Boston's better than both Denver and San Antonio.
I think just the proven formula and format of like I'm confident, not confident. I feel this good. I feel good enough to put Boston to like seeing Jason Tatum back. If Jason Tatum was not performing at this level, that Boston would be very clearly, I think, for me, the last team here. But I think they have a lot of defensive versatility. They have the ability to just put out two-way juggernauts on the floor. And the fact that Boston's going to put you in a situation offensively where it's a completely different damn if you do, damn if you don't, to like the Lakers, which is, I think, the last example of this that I brought up, where, you know, we have the off-ball gravity. We have the guys that can shoot the piss out of the ball on this team, like Bear Shireman or Pam Pritchard, Sam Hauser, Derek White. Even though he has the shot at well percentage-wise, he gets them up at extreme volume, and you might get the outlier playoff series where Derek White shoots 44% from three on 10 attempts. He will get that series.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen round 1 if they play. Never mind, they can't even play Miami. Anywho, they're going to crash. They're going to do all this stuff. They just, there isn't, Denver's the only other team that, I mean, all these teams except San Antonio, but Boston just does the things that consistently are found in championship level teams. And then also they have 2 high level one-on-one advantage creators, which is just going to consistently put you in rotation. And you don't want to be in rotation against Boston, because then it's, again, all the plethora of shooters, or is Kada on the offensive glass, or it's Vucevic attacking a post-up mismatch, or even spreading it out and spacing the floor from 3. So I'm just trusting and Joe Mazzulla is just so clearly an elite coach, elite playoff level coach. I think my sell to you would just be like the formula of Tatum, Brown, White, Mazzulla. The fact that I think they're gonna cause you to get really, really creative defensively. Now, I will say, if you wanted to kind of attack their own counterpoint, it's like, dude, they could get really, really 3-point heavy, especially in the playoffs. We saw that last year against the Knicks. But I think they've leaned into Jaylen Brown even more of like, dude, we're just going to give you the ball. You're going to get 2 feet in the paint and just draw foul or get to the rim. And now we're getting an easier, more open corner 3 for Derek White or Pam Pritchard or Sam Hauser, whoever the case may be. So that's my argument for Boston too. and you didn't ask, but I'm gonna really quickly make my argument for Denver 3 over San Antonio 4. It's not even the we don't know what San Antonio is and the Wemby variable in the playoffs. It's not even that. I've used that before, and I think it is kind of old now. I think San Antonio is just really, really good. I have Denver 3 because, yeah, I mean, you said it earlier. Denver just is the best offense of all time with Jokic on the floor. They're just the best offense of all time. So, like, shrug, we'll figure the other stuff out. And, I mean, Denver has some major defensive question marks, especially in against certain matchups. However, we've also seen just consistent examples of Denver scaling up defensively in playoff series, at least to a point where it's not even that big of an issue. It's more so like health variants at that point, or shot making variants at that point, that rare and just not consistent shot variants are health that kind of messes up Denver over this past 4-year stretch. But they're healthy now. They're the best offense arguably in NBA history, and their defense has very consistently over this championship window since Jamal Murray got back healthy the year they won the title. Their defense consistently goes from below average to average, and
It's enough.
That's enough. You're the best, literally the best offense of all time. So that's why I have Denver 3 over San Antonio 4. It literally has absolutely nothing to do with San Antonio. It just over the fact that I'm just going to take the best offense ever.
So you kind of made the argument for why I lean on Boston at 4. And I don't, like I said, I don't feel great about it. So I'm going to leave OKC out of this discussion. I do think they're like chalked in at number 1, and I'm sure you'd agree with that. 2 through 4 to me,
defense, good.
Yeah, two through 4 to me is like, man, I could see every different possible way to order these guys. I think there are 2 things that kind of hang me up on Boston. I think one is they are the lowest transition frequency team in basketball. They just do not get those easy transition opportunities. And I think when you talk about getting the easy stuff like that, some of that is a function of the way they defend. Like they're a very, like, we don't gamble, we don't risk. We are going to hold our matchups. We're going to get into our shell, and we're just going to like play the most sound team defense. That does matter. They don't really force turnovers, and it's by nature, like by structure. They also don't turn the ball over on offense, so they win that battle. But they don't get the easy stuff in transition. That's kind of the downside of that. And I do think there are situations where you kind of alluded to where the half court offense might not be able to produce this super strong signal. And it's like, if you're not getting the easy stuff and then you start to get a little bit 3-point reliant, or maybe one of the Jays goes cold, or something like that happens, or maybe the shooters go cold, like Derek White goes cold or something like that. I do think there is a case where they're not a tier 1 half court offense. And then also they aren't really running in transition. So they start to kind of like not have the best offensive production over the course of a playoff series. I think that's a scenario. Would I expect it to happen? No, but I think it could happen. I do think this Boston team creates more margin for error than any other team during the Tatum era because of the way they dominate the turnovers on offense. They don't turn the ball over because of their ability to crash the offensive glass. And then also, like you said, they're relying on Jaylen Brown a lot more as a 2-point scorer. And that's just like such a high floor where it's like, yeah, I can generate 16, 17 twos a game and make 54% of them or whatever he's hitting. Like, that is extremely valuable. And then also I'm going to get to the line 8 times a game. And you can't really scheme for my athleticism. Like that last game against OKC, especially where Jaylen Brown was just getting 2 feet in the paint against that defense at will, was really kind of to me, a foreshadowing of what we're going to see in these Eastern Conference playoffs, where teams just aren't going to be able to keep Jaylen Brown out of the paint. And that matters. But the second hang up I have with Boston, in addition to the fact that they don't get the easy stuff in transition, is I had to split hairs, right? And I don't think they have that one superpower that you look to and you're like, what in the world do we do about this? So it's like, yes, their 3-point shooting can be considered a superpower. Their ability to take care of the ball, their rebounding, some of their defensive switchability, their coaching. But like, I look at the Nuggets and it's like, teams have to figure out this Jokic variable. Like, it's something that has to be solved. You have to figure out a way to stop them from producing a 125 offensive rating, or you're cooked. I look at the Spurs and I'm like, you have to figure out how in the world you're going to get Wemby out of the paint. And then also like what you're going to do against Wemby on the other side of the ball, because his roll gravity just leads to open corner threes for 40% shooters every single time. And then do you switch? Do you let Wemby get a mismatch whenever he wants? And then also, what do you do with their athleticism between Castle, Fox, and Harper? I think both the Spurs and the Nuggets have these superpowers, whereas the Celtics to me feel like the team that doesn't have weaknesses, right? Like I think the Spurs have weaknesses. I think the Nuggets have weaknesses that you can look at, but they also have superpowers that you have to react to. And I think the Celtics are the most sound team where it's like, we don't have a weakness, but also what is our superpower? What is the thing we do that the other team has to panic and figure out for us? And I don't know if they have that. And it's maybe it's not a great argument, but like I said, you have to split hairs with teams of this caliber. And I do think the other teams, but it's weird the way I think about these matchups though, because I do think Boston would have a much better chance of beating OKC than Denver. Like I think Boston and OKC is like Boston's a much tougher matchup for OKC than Denver. I think OKC's kind of figured out Denver in some regards. I think Denver could beat them in a series, like it's possible. But also, like you talked about, their superpower is we're the best offense of all time with Jokic on the court. Well, they're not against OKC. It's like a 110 offensive rating in the last 2 seasons. Like they can't break that defense down. So it's like, yeah, I don't know what you do about that. And that's kind of why I went with Denver below San Antonio. I actually think, and let me know what you think about this. I think in a second round matchup, I'm going to lean towards Denver over San Antonio. And it's specifically because San Antonio can't stop Jokic. They cannot. Like, San Antonio has nothing for the Jokic variable because of the impossible bind he puts them in with the Wemby situation. So every other team in the league, it's we can find ways to keep Wemby on the baseline as a roamer. Jokic being a 60% short mid-range player breaks that. Because if they want to use Wemby as the roamer, it's, okay, we'll have Jokic against Harrison Barnes, and we'll post him up and just go over the top. Or you want Wemby on the weak side? Okay, we'll put Cam Johnson or Aaron Gordon there. They're going to make 40% of their open threes. And it's, we want Wemby on Jokic. Okay, Jokic, we're going to start spamming post-ups, and you can go over the top. Or we're going to put Wemby in different screening actions with you running around screens on the perimeter because you're an off-ball shooting weapon. We're going to have you run point guard, and now Wemby's lifted out of the paint, and they don't have a secondary rim protector. So it's, we need a secondary rim protector. We got to get Luke Cornett on the court. Oh, well, there goes your spacing advantage on offense with Wemby at the 5. And I think Denver is the one team that puts San Antonio in that bind because Jokic is such a unique offensive player with his short mid-range ability and then also his ability to space the floor from the top of the key and pull Wemby out of the paint. So it's like, do we put Wemby on Jokic or Wemby on Gordon? What do we do as a roamer? That's the only team that San Antonio runs into that issue with. And I think Denver kind of has them figured out. In Wemby's career, with Wemby on the court in his career, the Spurs have a 111 defensive rating. When Wemby's on the court and Jokic is also on the court, it's a 126 defensive rating. Denver just absolutely torches the Spurs. And I think San Antonio can get a lot of that back on offense. Like Denver doesn't really have an answer for their size and athleticism. But if it comes down to a shootout, I'm taking Denver over San Antonio in a 7-game series. And that's kind of why I go with Denver over San Antonio in that specific matchup. However, I think against every other team, San Antonio's a better team. I think San Antonio's better against Boston. I think they're better against OKC. I think they're better against Detroit. I think they're better against Cleveland, New York, Houston, Minnesota, all these teams we talked about. And so that's where I'm like, okay, I think Denver could get the better of San Antonio one-on-one, but if we're just talking about the best playoff team, the best contender, I do think it's a much more realistic pathway where it's San Antonio beats Denver, and then they're also in a better position to beat the other 19 playoff teams. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, you're going to say the same thing I was going to say because I was having a conversation with my players. I was like, dude, I don't think Denver could be OKC. I don't think San Antonio could beat Denver. But I didn't want to say it, but I don't think OKC could be San Antonio, which is why it just comes down to a matchup thing.
You don't
San
think
Antonio
OKC can beat
7-game? Me picking OKC would be like shea bump.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude, it's the Wemby. The Wemby effect is so insane. It really is. Like he takes the most valuable spot on the basketball court and just makes it a non-factor. Like it's just something you can't get to. Even Denver, like unless Wemby's on Jokic up top, like that's when they start to get their layups and dunks. That's why it's such a weird matchup. But like OKC, there's no lineup they can put out there that Wemby's not going to be able to roam. Boston, they would have to go ultra small, and then they just get killed on offense because of the athleticism. I do think like the athleticism in the backcourt in unison with everything Wemby forces teams to do on the other side of the ball is just this unique like really unique pairing that creates a crazy signal. Like it's the synergistic effect where it's like Wemby without the athletic guys, I don't think would be as dominant or as historic. And the athletic guys without Wemby wouldn't be as dominant with their rim pressure. But it's like the way these things fuse together, just it's this like, what the heck are we supposed to do against these guys? It's like if we go all offense to try and get Wemby out of the paint, we cannot stop them from getting layups and dunks at will. Like they're just going to get to the free throw line, get to the rim over and over and over again. But then it's okay. We need to prioritize stopping Castle, stopping Harper, stopping Fox, stopping even Keldon Johnson off the bench or Harrison Barnes from getting to the rim, getting to the free throw line. We need to stop Vassell and Champagne from getting these wide open corner threes that they're going to hit at a 40% clip. Once you do that, where's your offense against Wemby? You better hope you get hot on jumpers. And I think that superpower San Antonio has is I don't know what you could do against that. So to me, they are solidified in that top 2 spot. And I do think they've performed against the best teams extremely well. Like elite half court offense, number 3 against top 10 defenses. They've got the number 4, I believe, or number 5 half court defense against top 10 offenses. They win the transition battle. Like they're a really good transition offense because of all those athletes. They take great care of the ball. They're a great rebounding team. They just win all these margins. They're a great 3-point shooting team because they can go to 3-point heavy lineups with Wemby floor raising on defense. They have an elite 2-way lineup they can go to in so many different ways. Like Castle, Fox, and then Vassell, Champagne, Wemby. That's an elite 2-way lineup. They're great in the clutch. They close games on both sides of the ball. They just check every box you look for in a contender, and that's why they won 63 games. Unfortunately, a full-strength OKC team is just like on a short list, and we talked about this, of one of the best teams in basketball. They dominate every single margin except rebounding. It's like, yeah, turnovers, we're going to not turn the ball over, and we're going to turn you over 50 times. Transition, yeah, we're going to get back. You're not going to get any easy buckets, and we're going to get all of the easy buckets. And then in late game situations, they have the most reliable late game half court offensive weapon I've ever seen in my life. Like, have you seen a more reliable weapon in the half court in late game situations than 2026 Shea? It's absurd. Every single close game, every single one. It's just hold this midi. Hold this midi. There's nothing you can do. And then good luck scoring on them. Like they'll put Caruso on the court. They'll put Dort on the court. They'll put Kasem Wallace on the court. They'll start doubling Shea at half court, and it doesn't matter. He's still making you hold this midi. It's insane. So it's like, even if you get in 7 close games, like you make it close enough and the margin for error is there, you're going to lose. You're just going to lose. You're not going to win those games. And then they also create the largest margin of victory of any team I've seen in the playoffs. Like when they hit their ceiling, when the 3-point shots start falling, when J-Dub's going, when Chet's going, like those 2 games against Denver where they just run them out of the gym. So like it's a 7-game series, but they end that with like a plus 12 net rating because those 2 games, they just run Denver out of the gym. So the margin for error against OKC is so low that to me, they're pretty close to a perfect playoff team at their ceiling. And then at their floor, it's, oh, we're the best defense in basketball, and Shea is the best offensive floor raiser, not named Jokic. Good luck. And yeah, I think that's what it is. I think OKC is just clearly the best team in basketball still. I think San Antonio could beat them. I think Boston could beat them. I think Denver, outlier, could maybe beat them. But in terms of like, yeah, I would say the better playout, like, I would have a tough time betting the field versus OKC if it was a 50-50. And that's what it comes down to for me.
I think with OKC, like you mentioned, I think the selling point with them is that how many teams in NBA history have a higher floor than this current Oklahoma City Thunder team does? Okay, cool. Then you get to their ceiling. It's like, dude, you're just not winning. There is a 0.1% chance of you winning. You have to leave the rare probability like hex out there on the table. But, dude, okay, their ceiling is, okay, Shea's going to make you hold this midi 30 times and give you 30 in on plus 11 efficiency. Okay, Chet's and J-Dub are also chipping in between 15 and 20. Kaysen's hitting his threes. Ludort's hitting his threes. Caruso's hitting a couple. Okay, well.
AJ Mitchell.
Jared
McCain.
Well, okay, they're very clearly, we're going to be able to score on them and make this shootout. No, this is one of the 4 best defenses in NBA history, and I'm just saying 4 because we're 2.5 hours in, and I don't want to have a think piece about how historic OKC's defense is.
The
But, like,
1970 Lakers are better.
yeah, like, come on, bro. we don't have time for that. But no, like, their ceiling, their floor is as high. The first team that immediately comes to my mind, I would argue OKC's floor is higher. I think this other team's ceiling might be on the same level, is 2017 Golden State. That's the first team that immediately comes to my mind. I would say because of their defense and because of how consistent. Like, okay, OKC at their floor, you're gonna get historic level defense. You're gonna get Shea being Shea regardless. But like their floor is basically none of our shooters are hitting shots. J-Dub looks inefficient, and you get like a average Chet game. Like, okay, but that's
I think
still,
Golden State's floor. I think Golden State's floor is the best.
floor.
That 2017 Warriors team, because like our floor is, well, we're still the best offense in the league. We're just not an outlier anymore. And they're also a top 3 defense.
Okay.
It's like, oh, our floor, like we're at our absolute floor. We're the number 1 offense and the number 2 defense. Like,
Our net rating goes from +17 to +7. Darn.
yeah, dude. And then their ceiling is freaking. They're up by 60 in the third quarter.
Oh man, that's funny.
That team was stupid. But that's like, it's to your point. Like OKC's floor is it's ridiculous. I mean, yeah, there's not much that needs to be said about OKC. So let's read our final rankings out. I actually am going to make a change. Last second. I'm going to put the Knicks over the Cavs. I think us talking it out kind of sold me on that. So good job, Sean. You got me to move on the Knicks and Cavs. Hopefully I got you to move on the Rockets. Bumped them up for me. Shout out Kevin Durant, man. My list from top to bottom. I've got the top tier is the inner circle. To me, this is the Thunder, the Spurs, the Nuggets, and the Celtics. I think the next tier is the outlier title push. You've got the Pistons, the Timberwolves, the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Rockets. Then you've got the could make a sneaky run. Maybe I would probably predict you have a second round exit ceiling. This is the Hornets, the Clippers, the Lakers, the Warriors, the Hawks, Raptors, and Suns. Then you've got a second to last tier for me, which is if you get into the playoffs, you're just a first round exit to me because of some serious limitations. Those are the 76ers, the Heat, and the Magic. And then you've got the bottom tier for me, a team all alone by themselves. I just think you are by far the worst team going into the playoffs. That is the Portland Trailblazers. Sean?
From top to bottom, tier 1, I'm just going to keep the same tiers and the same wording. I think we're basically on the same page. The inner circle, going the Thunder, the Celtics, the Spurs. Wait, no. Thunder, Celtics, Nuggets, Spurs. Then tier 2, I have the Pistons, the Knicks, the Timberwolves, the Cavs. And I'll put Houston in tier 3. Houston almost, but for me though, Houston almost feels like a tier in and of themselves.
I was gonna say that, yeah. That I just didn't want to have a 1-team tier in the middle of the list.
Yeah, and I don't even know what to call it, but like they're better than everybody in this. They're so very clearly better than everybody in this tier, not named LA. Being LA is just the Lakers because of the injury stuff. But they're also like, for me at least, pretty clearly not better than any of the other teams in that same tier, like Cleveland, Minnesota. But anyway, I'll move them up. I'll put them in that tier.
There we
because
go.
they
Shout
are
out Kevin
very
Durant.
clearly not better than. I mean, they're very clearly better than everybody else, not named the Lakers. So Houston jumps up in tier 2 for me. Tier 3 is the Lakers, Clippers, Hornets, Raptors, Warriors, Hawks, Suns. And then the last tier, I didn't wind up having the Blazers in a tier of their own. I went 76ers, Heat, Magic, Blazers.
All right, you guys have got it. 2.5 hours done. Our longest episode of the season, maybe our longest episode of all time. I don't remember how long this was last time. Yeah, I would think so. Follow us on social media. Sean's on Twitter at Sean_DAVI. He's on Instagram at Sean_Davis23. He's on YouTube at the Sports Headline Show or the Los Angeles Lakers Network. You know where to find me, Tyler Britton_ on all platforms. And then for my NBA content, Hoop Venue on all platforms. Of course, I cannot wait to start dropping these playoff series previews. We're here. The NBA season is over. The play-in is 2 days away. We'll catch you guys next time. Wait. Actually, 5-star rating, like, subscribe, comment your rankings, all that good stuff. Can't forget the most important stuff. No, we really appreciate you guys listening, and we'll catch you guys next time, probably with some play-in reactions in episode number 82.